Before we get into our proclamations, I want to make an announcement today regarding today's meeting. We have more than 600 requests to speak on our agenda today. We'll be here for 24 consecutive hours of just public comment. And I think out of an interest to ensure that the public is heard and that we want every speaker who's calling in today to have an opportunity to have their voice heard, we will limit public comment today to 1 minute on all items. You can still say an awful lot in 1 minute. And we will allow us to ensure that everyone who is called in today will have the opportunity to have their voice heard. With that, we will move into our proclamations. I will present the first proclamation honoring National Nurses Month. Accepting this proclamation will be Dr. Denise Foster. May is National Nurses Month, and as Dr. Anthony Fauci recently said, nurses are the heroes of this outbreak, and I cannot.
The global COVID-19 pandemic has shown the world the important role that nurses play in keeping people healthy. From the front lines and virtual meeting rooms to the hospitals and clinics in the field, your nurses have been innovative in creating new ways to increase access to care. San Diego County nurses have put in place new services, stood up care in unique locations, and adapted established practices to be COVID-19 compliant, guided by compassion, cultural humility, and the awareness that each person is unique. Our nurses remain committed during this pandemic to making people's lives safer, healthier, and self-sufficient. Speaking on their behalf, we are honored to practice and serve under the leadership of your board. Thank you again for this recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Foster, and thank you to all of our nurses. Our next two proclamations will be brought forward by Vice Chair Nora Vargas, and I will turn it to Vice Chair Vargas to introduce her proclamations and present them to each.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. It is my honor to introduce, to celebrate the Chicano Park Steering Committee this morning. When I think of Chicano Park, I think of legacy to achieve equity and preserve culture, not just for this community, but for all communities. The Chicano Park Steering Committee is celebrating its 51st anniversary, and it's appropriate at this time to highlight its many achievements in protecting the legacy of Chicano Park and San Diego Logan Heights neighborhoods. By providing a space to lift the voices of the most marginalized through its rich history and beautiful murals, this park has inspired many social justice advocates, including myself, and it's in the spirit of this movement that I have dedicated my life to civic engagement, public policy, and community organizing. Just like those in this community who have worked to ensure access to preserve and to fight for Chicano Park. This committee advocates every day for the communities of my district to ensure they are not left behind, especially now during this pandemic. Residents of District 1 continue to demonstrate, often demonstrate that they have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. Unfortunately, our youth and older generations were already facing disparities for decades, and the pandemic brought many of these disparities to light. The park's legacy and the work that the steering committee continues to lead are reflective of the resilience of the surrounding community. One stroll along the murals and you will see the story of a united community that rose up to face adversity. Chicano Park represents persistence and resilience, and this committee has followed through with those principles, and together with an amazing group of social justice warriors, the park continues to thrive and be a place where many call home. The pride of this park is something that can be felt through San Diego County. I am honored to be here to present this proclamation recognizing the 51st anniversary of Chicano Park, and accepting this proclamation today is Tommy Camarillo, Chair of the Chicano Park Steering Committee. Mr. Camarillo?
No, accepting on behalf of Tommy Camarillo is Lucas Cruz Jr.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Yeah. Welcome, Lucas.
Hello, and just on behalf of the CPSC, thank you for the recognition. CPSC, we're an all-volunteer. We have done everything. Everything in the park has been fought for and struggled for, whether it's with the county, whether it's with the state, whether it's with the city, and we'll continue to fight to preserve the legacy of Chicano Park. We appreciate the proclamation, but also hope that we can go farther than a proclamation and look at the park and see how we can keep it going forward for the future.
Thank you so much. Now, the second proclamation is really, I'm so excited to do this. I'm thrilled to be able to celebrate and honor amazing mothers today. Mothers are the spirit of our families and the foundation of our community. In our communities, mothers have played a crucial role in our workforce by holding important jobs and careers, and in our homes by caring for children and their families. I see some of my own team members balance the art of being a working mom, and these magnificent working women work tirelessly to support each and every one of us. The impact they have in our lives and in our community lives on through each passing generation. They are nurturing, caring, supportive, and guide us all, especially in our most difficult and trying times. Mothers are our strength and inspiration, and we're blessed to have them in our lives. These amazing working mothers manage very difficult circumstances by doing their best in the workplace and managing their household, all while caring for the whole family. They are truly amazing. They sacrifice a lot so their families can reach their highest aspirations. I know how a special mother can be because I had the perfect mother. My mother worked tirelessly to raise my siblings and I, and in a loving and caring environment, all while dedicating 20 years of her life to working for the MAC Project, a social service nonprofit which serves here in the South Bay. My mother taught me the value of hard work and respect for others, and to always raise my voice when witnessing injustice. Everything I am today and everything I have accomplished is in huge part because of her lessons and her encouragement, and for that I am immensely grateful for her. While Mother's Day is a great opportunity to celebrate our mom and those who have served as mother figures, we should always celebrate them. They are extraordinary caretakers, mentors, providers, and guardians that influence who we are. I am so proud to bring forward this resolution today, declaring May 9th, 2021 as Working Mother's Day, and express our deepest love and appreciation to our mothers while we remember those that are no longer with us. Here today, Brenda Ramos from Madres Unidas de San Isidro will accept this proclamation on behalf of her organization. The group works tirelessly in the community by supporting the schools and other organizations that serve the community. Madres Unidas are the voice of their community, the families, and the students. This exceptional group exemplifies the true passion and love mothers have for their families and communities. Me da muchísimo gusto y estoy muy contenta de poder celebrar y honrar a nuestras madres trabajadoras con esta en el alma de nuestras familias y la base de nuestra comunidad. En nuestras comunidades, nuestras madres tienen un papel muy especial. Son nuestras guías, nuestros trabajadores, administradores del hogar, son proveedoras y dan su apoyo incondicional a nuestras familias. Por eso estoy infinitamente agradecida hoy y bendecida de que tengo la oportunidad de reconocer a este grupo de mujeres y que particularmente han hecho tanto por nuestras comunidades. Me da muchísimo gusto presentar esta resolución y decreto el 9 de mayo de 2021 como el Día de las Madres Trabajadoras. Hoy Brenda Ramos de Madres Unidas de San Isidro nos acompaña para recibir este reconocimiento. Este grupo diariamente brinda apoyo en la comunidad trabajando con las escuelas y otras organizaciones. Madres Unidas son la voz de su comunidad, sus familias y los estudiantes de las escuelas. Este grupo excepcional nos demuestra la pasión que tienen las madres por su comunidad. Muchísimas gracias. Bienvenida, Brenda.
Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas, and congratulations to both of those groups being honored. Thank you for joining us today. We'll next go to Supervisor Lawson Reamer, who has two proclamations to present. Supervisor, please call forward your presenters.
Great, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be presenting these two proclamations today. So the first one is honoring SEIU USWW for creating a more inclusive union. As we celebrate International Workers' Day, it is my honor to present this proclamation. USWW has been a pillar for immigrant workers and their families in our community for more than 3 decades. They have fought in the face of hate and threats and deportation. The members of this union, service workers in the janitorial industry, have supported citizenship and helped create a space that strives for economic justice for more than 2,000 workers. During this pandemic, they have also been vital in sharing information about COVID-19 and the impacts to our community and vaccine accessibility. I had the honor to present this proclamation at their Caravan Action this past Friday. And today we have Miriam Torres, who will be accepting this proclamation on behalf of SEIU USWW. Miriam, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear Supervisor, on behalf of 47,000 essential workers across California, SEIU USWW, thank you for such an important recognition. My fellow janitor and I have been of frontline of this pandemic, working long hours. I'm feeling that we may be infected or worse, get seriously ill. Sadly, many of my coworkers have gotten sick. Some have died. Today, as the County of San Diego honor janitor, let us all also honor our working families who have sacrificed their health and their life to keep our economy going. As our county and state prepare to open the economy, let us commit to ensure that we have a much more just society where we afford all people, immigrant and citizen, I like the right to live with peace and dignity, to have the right to union, to have the right to live in society free of racism and sexism. Today, we proclaim the right to have rights. Voy a hablarlo en español también.
Sí.
Nosotras y nosotros, gracias. Nosotras y nosotros somos la fuerza laboral que mantiene a este condado limpio y hemos estado en las primeras filas combatiendo a esta pandemia, desinfectando y limpiándole a los ricos. Este reconocimiento lo aceptamos al nombre de tantas mujeres y tantos hombres que sacrificaron su salud y sus vidas. Y junto con la mesa de supervisores, nos comprometemos hoy más que nunca a luchar por una sociedad más justa, más digna, donde se nos respete en los centros de trabajo el derecho a tener una unión y un contrato, y que en nuestras comunidades vivamos con dignidad. Queremos ponerle un fin a la explotación, al racismo y al sexismo. Como trabajadores migrantes, aquí estamos y no nos vamos. Este es nuestro país y proclamamos que nunca más San Diego sin nosotras. Muchas gracias. Estamos realmente agradecidas por este reconocimiento. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So my second proclamation today honors San Diego labor leaders Carlos and Linda Legretti and Ken M. Samaji and Fahari Jeffers. In the spirit of honoring those leaders in our community who have helped shape our region, it is my honor to have with us today Carlos and Linda Legretti and Ken M. Samaji. Linda and Carlos worked for the United Farm Workers, organizing a workforce of campesinos across California, including in San Diego County. Linda and Carlos worked humbly and with great persistence, supporting workers who were often invisible and in their struggle to organize, regardless of their immigration status. Ken M. Samaji and the late Fahari Jeffers took on the monumental, transformative, sometimes seemingly impossible task of organizing domestic workers. Initially meeting with Mexican women who crossed the border for housekeeping jobs in San Diego, and later organizing in-home supportive service workers. They blazed the way for working women, working families, and immigrants, dedicating their lives to organizing in the face of difficult odds, giving voice to the voiceless, and empowering those who dedicate their lives to caring for others, but who are too often marginalized and in the shadows. Ken and Fahari, Carlos and Linda are pioneers and have earned their place in San Diego history as labor leaders who made a difference, a profound difference in the lives of the most vulnerable. So on behalf of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, it is my honor to declare May 1st through May 8th as San Diego Labor Leaders Week, honoring Linda and Carlos and Ken and Fahari. We stand on the shoulder of giants. Please join me in welcoming these leaders. We'll first have some remarks from Carlos and Linda, and then after that, we have Ken who will say a couple words. I'll turn the floor to Linda Legretti now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer. This is a beautiful proclamation. And as I'm reading it and listening to everybody this morning, Carlos and I want to say thank you so much for this recognition and this honor. But honestly, what it is a great reminder about how lucky we have been, how fortunate we have been over our lifetime to be able to do this kind of work, that we were chosen somehow to do this work. So we really do appreciate the recognition. I cannot even tell you how honored that Carlos and I are on the same proclamation with Ken Bahari, who we've known for years. And I'm sure Ken will talk a little bit about whatever he's going to talk about, but this really means a lot to us. And as I see people I just have to say this on your screen today, like Lucas, if you could please say hello to Tommy Camarillo. I really, miss her, and I hope she's well. Please tell her hello for us. And Josie too. I mean, this is amazing. It feels good to be recognized for things you've done, but honestly, it's been what we've wanted to do our whole lives. So thank you for the recognition.
I guess I get a minute here.
30 seconds.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
How about 10? I'd like to thank everybody, but also to share this award with those who really make the sacrifices. And those who really make the sacrifices are the family members of the organizers. So we want to share this award with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ken.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Lawson Reamer and others. It's absolutely an honor to represent Fahadi Jeffers, rest in peace and power, who in a few days on May 8th would have been 67 years old. I want to also say to Tommy Camarillo, I hope you're well and congratulations on your work. Mother's Day is coming up. I was fortunate to have two mothers, Vita Seaton, who passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 97, and Carmen Gutierrez, who passed away 10 years ago. My mother-in-law, Jessie Pearl Jeffers, treated me like she gave birth to me herself, and so I want to mention her too. The United Domestic Workers of America was the only labor union of that sort in American labor history. The third union that was built from the ground up by people of color. The first was A. Philip Randolph and the Sleeping Car Porters. The second was the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And then there was us. This is an honor. We hope to continue to represent our constituencies honorably, with pride, and with humility. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Lawson Reamer. Thank you, Ken, and a special thank you to Linda and Carlos. It is wonderful to see you both, and thank you for all you do for our community. I want to return to Vice Chair Vargas so we can make sure we hear from Brenda Ramos. Our apologies for moving a little fast there, but let me turn it back over to Vice Chair Vargas to introduce Brenda.
No problem. Señorita Brenda, ¿estás aquí con nosotros?
Sí, aquí estoy, Gloria. Buenos días a todos.
Buenos días.
Pues es para mí un honor y para nuestro grupo de madres que nos hayan invitado a ser partícipe de esta asamblea. No nos queda más que darnos las gracias. Estamos muy orgullosos por el...
Public communication. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Supervisors on subject matters that are within our jurisdiction but are not on today's agenda. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer, a reminder pursuant to rules of proceeding for members of the public that are non-English speaking remarks. Today it is 1 minute, and if you need interpretation, would be a second minute to allow for that interpretation to take place. At this point, I'll ask the clerk to please.
Or request to speak on matters not listed on the agenda. Any members of the public that have, and again, please press *6 to unmute your line.
No, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9364. 9364.
This is Michelle Crew. Good morning. Congratulations to all those that have received proclamations, organizations, and individuals. I want to ask that when I'm filling out the forms,
Looks like we lost Ms. Krug. We will come back to you. The next caller is 7613. 7613. Again, 7613, please press star 6 to unmute your line. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Becky Rapp, and as a public health educator, I recently attended a Tobacco Tuesday seminar on April 3rd.
We'll try back to Becky Rapp again, 7613. If you can press star 6 to unmute your line. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Great. Good morning. As a public health educator, I recently attended a Tobacco Tuesday seminar on April 13th, provided by the County Office of Education through their Friday Night Live program, at which we had the opportunity to hear Supervisor Fletcher speak to the importance of educating youth on the harmful effects of tobacco use. In the question and answer, he was asked how teen tobacco use compares to teen marijuana use. Supervisor Fletcher commented that he really didn't know the negative effects of teen marijuana use and would need to see more research. I am here today to provide a very small part of the information available. A study out of Colorado, 204,000 young people ages 10 to 24, released in January in the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics publication, found elevated risk of self-harm among young people who smoked, vaped, consumed marijuana. Quoting, "We found substantial evidence that THC use can cause acute psychotic symptoms, which are worse with higher doses. Further, youth who reported having consumed cannabis in the past 30 days, 52% said they had dabbed or vaped a high THC cannabis concentrate. This is up from..."
Mike Levin, I want to thank Chair Fletcher, Vice Chair Vargas, and Supervisor San Diego County get through this pandemic. As you all know, we're now more than a year in rent, feed their kids, pay their bills. Many of those checks have already arrived in San Diego County residents' bank accounts. It also includes a lot of other funding to help feed hungry families, and it supports organizations and expands eligibility for the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, to 501c nonprofits of all sizes and types, with the exception of 501c4 lobbying organizations. So groups like our local food banks and other nonprofits can finally receive relief that they so desperately need. And it's also critical for other small businesses like the ones here in San Diego trying to make it through this pandemic. And importantly, there is a new restaurant revitalization fund. In fact, the applications process just started. The SBA is administering that program. It's a $28.6 billion program for restaurants and bars with 20 or fewer locations that have been hit hard by the pandemic. I hope that my office can help many of our San Diego County restaurant owners apply for that relief as quickly as possible. And the funding, I hope, will help prevent a lot more job losses. And of course, at the end of the day, this is all about getting our economy back on track. And I've been focused, among other things, on the veteran population. I am really happy to report that as part of the rescue plan, my colleagues and I in the Veterans Affairs Committee were able to secure nearly $400 million for a rapid retraining program to help unemployed veterans get to work. And that's above and beyond any GI Bill or other veterans benefits. And I encourage our veterans to go to va.gov to learn more about that, or they can contact our office as well. Finally, I wanted to talk about cities and counties. I know that San Diego County and most of the cities, in fact, all the cities in my district, have seen significant revenue losses because of this pandemic. Tax revenues taken a drastic hit in many places. Some cities have been forced to cut services or even lay people off or postpone or cancel projects. And I'm very happy that thanks to the American Rescue Plan, San Diego County will be receiving a total of just over $647 million in direct funding to help keep public workers on the job and maintain essential services. Finally, also money for our schools. We know that our kids have not received the education that they deserve during the pandemic, despite the best efforts of our teachers and our administrators and so many others. And let me tell you, with 2 young children at home, my wife and I, sending them to our local public schools, we are eager to get them back to in-person 5 days a week. And to help make that happen, there's over $908 million of federal relief money from the American Rescue Plan going to San Diego County schools to help with modifying spaces, to invest in better ventilation, to reduce class sizes, and for PPE. And of course, next is our jobs plan. And that's what we're working on right now, the American Jobs Plan that the President spoke about last week at his joint session of Congress address. A lot of hopefully great wins coming for San Diego County around infrastructure development, clean energy innovation, and of course, the creation of many, many more jobs. So I'm hopeful that we can work collaboratively. I have already been working closely with our cities and hopeful that we can get some big wins again for San Diego County and the American Jobs Plan and the upcoming American Families Plan. So thanks again to our terrific board. Thank you, Chairman Fletcher. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our host. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. We'll go back to the caller 9364. 9364. And again, please press *6. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you, Ms. Krug.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. I don't know why it cut off. This is Michelle Krug again. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I am hoping that you might be able to change the form in which we sign up to speak. As a blind person who has to ask for help, having to fill out 7 different forms, or having friends fill out 7 individual forms to speak at each of your meetings is challenging. If you could just have one form, then you could mark off all of the items that someone wishes to speak to. It would make it a lot simpler. So I ask to consider streamlining it in that way. And the other thing is, if we could possibly speak before the proclamations are given, or speak directly to the proclamations, because it is an action of the board, and some of us would really like to appreciate individually the proclamations that are being presented. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the great job that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0680. 0680. And again, please press *6 to unmute your line. 0680.
Hi, this is Tegan McLean with Reopen San Diego, and it's time for us to end officially the state of emergency and let us get back to making our own choices and living by the Constitution, choosing to wear a mask or not wear a mask, and not pressuring these businesses to enforce something they may not want to enforce. We can make our own choices about our own health, how we run our businesses, how we interact as a community, bring back our beautiful faces and our humanity, and we want to make our own choices and live normally again. We're ready. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening, and let's make this change and get back to being a community again in San Diego.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2153. 2153.
I think I...
Good morning. This is Kelly McCormick. I'm a Tobacco Coalition member. I provide information to young people about the health risks of vaping and the way the tobacco industry uses flavored products to hook kids, quite successfully, I might add. Former CDC Director Scott Gottlieb identifies teen vaping as an epidemic. The Board of Supervisors approved a ban on the sale of flavored tobacco and e-cigarettes because it recognized the harm being done to our children. The decision was applauded by parents, public health advocates, educators, and many others who recognized that making flavored tobacco harder to get would save lives. The ban also sent the message that profiting off of youth addiction was not acceptable. Given this history, I cannot see how the board could turn a blind eye to the harms caused by marijuana. You wouldn't endorse a billboard advertising Juuls or Puff bars in the unincorporated areas, yet my 16-year-old son rides his bike past marijuana billboards on Del Dios Highway. Substance use disorders are now recognized as a pediatric onset disease. 9 out of 10 adults with addiction began smoking, drinking, or using other drugs before age 18. Make no mistake, those billboards are designed to attract the attention of people my son's age,
Thank you, ma'am.
to make him believe that marijuana use is normal, harmless, and fun.
Thank you. Moving on to the next caller is 4592. It's 4592.
Good morning, Supervisors. Kathleen Lippitt here. As an attendee of county planning groups, I wanted to bring
Thank you. My name is Barbara Gordon. I'm a mom and a youth group mentor. I am concerned with the board considering permitting marijuana businesses. The board needs to follow the science when making decisions that affect the health of its citizens. We have followed the science regarding COVID-19 guidelines and many other health issues. Why aren't you following the science when it comes to marijuana use? All major scientific and medical organizations agree that marijuana is both addictive and harmful to the human brain. Marijuana use is at all-time high, especially with our young people. 1 in every 6 16-year-olds and 1 in every 11 adults who try marijuana will become addicted to it. The latest Sandag report for juvenile arrestees, marijuana remains the drug of choice, with 55% testing positive for marijuana at the time of being arrested. It is no wonder our youth perspective of marijuana as a harmless drug is because it is being promoted and endorsed by our elected leaders. As a youth leader who is trying to guide teens to make good decisions, you're making my job so much harder. Thank you.
Our next caller is 7277. 7277.
Good morning. This is Diane Grace. I work in an unincorporated area of the county and my husband in San Diego. So I wanted to share with you what we are seeing in the city of San Diego as it deals with marijuana businesses there. The number of marijuana impaired drivers has increased, as reported in the San Diego City Attorney press release. High THC concentrate precipitates mental health crises, hallucinations, and paranoia, sometimes leading to violence and suicide, as reported at a mental health advisory board. Rampant advertising and billboards are a blight in the most vulnerable neighborhoods, as reported in San Diego's planning groups. This is local, real-time data and needs to be part of the county's consideration in the balance sheet that weighs marijuana tax revenues against the county staff and enforcement expenses, effect on youth and their family, and impact on neighborhoods and the services that support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8400. It's 8400.
Oh, hi. My name is Bill Huff. I live in Rancho Penasquitos. I'd just like to speak briefly about the COVID restrictions. Certainly, COVID's been devastating, but I'd like to point out that the effects of the lockdowns and restrictions have been pretty devastating as well. I looked today at the COVID dashboard. The case rate in San Diego County is 1.5%. The hospitalization rates are very low. And more importantly, vaccines are widely available to anybody who wants it over the age of 16, most likely soon to be widely available to anyone over the age of 12. I would like to ask that all COVID-related restrictions of any kind in San Diego County that aren't imposed at the state or federal level be ended immediately. Schools should be fully open, businesses should be allowed to fully open, public meetings should be fully open, churches should be fully open. No restrictions of any kind at this point. I think no restrictions are justified based on the present data and science and the availability of vaccines. Thank you very much. May the 4th be with you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7159. 7159.
Hi, my name is Mark Wilcox, Supervisors. I was surprised by the KPBS story regarding the amount of money coming from marijuana businesses to elected officials. although I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that the pay-to-play practice is in full swing at the supervisor's level. However, I was hoping that the goal of inclusion for those without a voice, for example, no money, might really happen. I guess not, since the proposed marijuana business ordinance came so quickly to the board without any clamor from the citizens of the unincorporated area planning groups indicating they wanted marijuana businesses there. The KPBS article went on with this disturbing statement, quote, Fletcher said one of the consultants who helped draft the policies was Dallin Young, a local cannabis advocate and lobbyist, who was his field director of his mayoral run in 2013, end quote. Again, the voice of money from cannabis capitalists took precedence over the voice of the people who are trying to yell, give us better roads, better lighting, and better access to water, not pot businesses. Thanks.
Our next speaker is 7872. 7872.
Hello, Board of Supervisors. My name is Allie Hartman. I'm with a group called Reopen San Diego. I want to point out that a few weeks ago in Texas, they had a packed stadium of 38,000 people. It was predicted to be a super spreader event. In fact, actually, they are at record low case rates, just as we are in California. So my point today is, why is there a state of emergency? Why are there any restrictions on any businesses, on any schools, social distancing, masking? Our medical services are not overwhelmed, and they haven't been for quite a while. In fact, actually, people between the ages of 15 to 24 were 10 times more likely to commit suicide last year than to die of COVID. So please, let our kids free. Our kids are killing themselves. And if you're voting for lockdowns, if you're voting for restrictions, then you're voting for our kids' destruction. It needs to end now.
Thank you, ma'am. The next speaker is 0874. 0874. Please press *6 to unmute your line. If we don't hear from you, we will come back to you. We'll come back to 9887. 9887.
Hello, supervisors. My name is Carol Green, and I just want to correct one thing that was just said, that the terminology when we speak of people that die by suicide is die by suicide, not commit suicide, just to make that clear. I'm here to speak to you in honor of Mental Health Month. I've shared with you my personal story in the past about how my son's psychosis was triggered by marijuana. And a number of studies have documented the correlation between marijuana and the onset of schizophrenia and other psychotic conditions. The use of marijuana and related products during the teen and young adult years can particularly increase the rigor of triggering onset of schizophrenia and psychosis. There is evidence that regular marijuana use may hasten the onset of symptoms of mood disorders, including bipolar disorder and major depression and anxiety disorders, particularly among young people. While our son was in crisis, my husband and I participated in NAMI's family-to-family program with 25 other families. And much to our horror, we discovered that each and every one of these families, their child was also triggered by marijuana.
Thank you, ma'am.
Respect Mental Health Month. Do some research. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller is 5992. 5992. Please press *6 if you'd like to speak on an item not on the agenda today. 5992. If not, the next caller will be 5639. 5639.
This is Kelly Davis. Tell our state representatives that their terms for the extension of San Pasqual Academy are unrealistic. You, our supervisors, are essentially the parents of these children, and you have misled them. Nora Vargas, you met them a week ago. You looked into their eyes, knowing your political gain means more to you than creating a future for them. You also claim to be passionate about fighting for the most marginalized. However, you have not fought for these kids. You are robbing them of their home, and you've hid from the press. Nathan Fletcher, you have misled the public by blaming low enrollment and state and federal laws for the closure of our beloved spa. But we know the truth. We know that you have already made plans for the site of spa, and they will benefit you politically. Thousands of people have helped support these children. We will continue to fight for the future of San Pasqual Academy. Make some phone calls. Get something done for these kids. Nathan Fletcher, if you can make a call to open our Little League Snack Shack, you can make a call to keep spa open. Don't just sit on your hands and pretend that it's out of your control, because we know that's not true, and we're watching you.
Thank you. Next caller is 6598. 6598.
Ann Riddle here, public health educator, proud mother of 2 nurses, and wanting to provide information from April being Minority Health Month. Recently, as part of that, CDC issued a release about a new study called Racial and Ethnic Differences in Marijuana Use in E-Cigarettes. This has been not as greatly explored as many of us would like to see. They mentioned that learning about racial and ethnic groups differences for our young people will help us do better targeted interventions. Of concern to me was that in terms of social equity, that creating an equity program, as the county is anticipating solely for cannabis, seems to be the exact opposite of equity, as it singles out one industry, one that's being heavily already invested in by alcohol and tobacco companies. As we continue to face the challenges of the pandemic and substance abuse and mental health crisis, this is the last time in our county we need to pursue this sort of ordinance. Thank you.
Last call for 5992. 5992. Chair Fletcher, not seeing any activity with that phone. That appears to conclude non-agenda public communication this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for all of our callers who called in this morning. Next on our agenda is approval of the board minute statement of proceedings for the minute of April 6th, 2021. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll second, Desmond.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded by Supervisor Desmond, to approve the minutes statement of proceedings for the meeting of April 6th, 2021. I'll ask clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Next, we'll proceed with the formation of our consent calendar. Let's begin with the clerk. Let me ask if there's any items on today's agenda that the public wishes pulled for discussion.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Yes, we have a number of items that have been pulled by the public this morning, so please bear with me as I go through all of the items. Item 1 has been pulled by the public. Item 2 has been pulled by the public. Item 4 has been pulled by the public. Item 5 has been pulled by the public. Item 6 has been pulled by the public. Item 7 has been pulled by the public. Item 9 has been pulled by the public. Item 10 has been pulled by the public. Item 11 is a presentation item. Item 12 has been pulled by the public. I'll note for the record that item 14 is being continued to the May 18th meeting at the request of the Chief Administrative Officer. Item 18 has been pulled by the public. Also note for the record that items 19, 20, and 21 have also been continued to the May 18th, 2021 board meeting at the request of the Chief Administrative Officer. Item 23 has been pulled by the public. Item 24 has been pulled by the public. Item 25 has been pulled by the public. Item 26 has been pulled by the public. Item 27 has been pulled by the public. Item 30 has been continued to the May 18th meeting at the request of the Chief Administrative Officer. Item 31 has been pulled by the public. And for item 34, I'd like to state for the record the following. that in accordance with Government Code Section 3511.1 and 59353C, a summary of the County Council salary and benefits is reported as follows. The annual salary for County Council will be $286,850. The County Council will also receive a monthly vehicle allowance of $675, and the county shall reimburse mileage at the IRS standard rate for any miles traveled for county business purposes. The county will contribute 2% of annual salary for the County Council's compensation plan and will reimburse up to $15,000 in relocation costs. Indemnity is provided for acts or omissions in the performance of the County Council duties. Consistent with other executive management employees of the County Council is eligible for health benefits, vision, dental, and comprehensive medical insurance. Other benefits include dependent life and long-term disability insurance, as well as workers' compensation. Paid time off include holidays, sick leave, and leave accruals on the same basis as other executive management employees with 15 or more years of experience, and a one-time 10-day initial accrual, which will count against accrual in the first year. Further benefits include a health reimbursement account, San Diego County employees, retirement association, retirement benefits, tax-deferred savings plans. These benefits are set forth in the employment agreement before the board today. With that note on the record, this item may remain on consent.
Thank you. Thank you to our clerk. Now I'll go to my colleague, Supervisor Anderson. Are there any items you wish pulled for discussion or comments you wish to make?
Not at this time.
Mr. Chair, we have,
yes.
Mr. Chair, pardon me, we have one correction to the statement I read in the record.
Okay, go ahead.
Chair, members of the board, the county council position receives a car allowance, and therefore there is not mileage reimbursement.
With that correction, I also note for the record that item 35 is closed session matters will be considered at the conclusion of the board's public session. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda may be placed in the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
All right, thank you both. Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. Next, I'll go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Hi, thanks. I think everything I wanted to pull is pulled. Let me just double check. 3 is pulled. 7.
No, 3 has not been pulled. Would you like to pull 3?
Yeah, I have an amendment.
Okay, item 3 has been pulled.
7 and 26.
26 was already pulled.
So we're good. Thank you.
Supervisor Desmond.
No further items to pull. I just have a comment on 3, but I'll hold it since the item has been pulled. So I'll make a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you. So let's see. I wanted to just make a comment on item 13. But hold on one second. I want to make sure that I have my notes out here. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that I am really glad that the state and federal revenue will cover a number of services and programs that are going to assist and serve the senior population. I just want to make sure that our services are comprehensive in order to meet the needs of our aging population, whether it's food security, housing, health care, mental health, overall well-being, and these programs get implemented in the upcoming fiscal year. I'm interested in learning more about who's utilizing the services, and I also want to share that my office is willing to be partner and help spread the word about the services that the county offers. I wanted to ensure that we're reaching everyone, especially those in my district that should be applying for these services. And so the other thing I wanted to note is that I will also be looking into how we can improve and enhance the various programs that we currently offer in the county to make sure that things work for our seniors and their families. I have firsthand experience that some of these services that county offers aren't always easy to navigate. And so I do want to say thank you for making sure that we are focusing on our aging population and asking that we make sure that we are looking at outreach and some other opportunities. Thank you for that, Chair. And I am happy to make a second to Supervisor Desmond's motion.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. We have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas for approval of the consent calendar. I would want the clerk to confirm my reading of what we have on today's agenda for discussion. That would be item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 18, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 31. I'll have the clerk to confirm those are the items for discussion on today's agenda, and then please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. That confirms the items that have been pulled for discussion this morning. And with that, Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Thank you. What we're going to do is start with agenda item 11. This was continued from our last board meeting. This is our behavioral health continuum. We will do agenda item 11. We will then do agenda item 10, our COVID update. We want to allow our Health and Human Services staff to get back to work. So we will do 11, 10, and then we will go sequentially in order, working through the file for today's items that are brought forward. And so with that, we will begin with agenda item 11, our behavioral health system continuum of care. I think this is very good news. This is a good news presentation. I'm very thankful that we have Dr. Bergman, Nick Machione, our agency director, really bringing innovative vision and approach to guide our behavioral health system. From the very first day I became a supervisor, I outlined my personal highest priority was reimagining our behavioral health system to really flip the pyramid, to change our mindset, approach, our staffing, our sourcing, where we go. And this board has been very committed, both the present board and the last board, to taking some substantive action, some very significant investments in our system of care. You're going to hear today an update on tremendous momentum and progress that is being made, along with the opportunity to provide new direction and insight in an issue that is a pressing concern, that of behavioral health, the intersection of mental health and drug treatment services. Really foundational to what we are trying to do is to change the mindset around from high acuity emergency care to investing in community care and care coordination to help people live a better quality of life at a lower level acuity, but that requires us to rethink and reimagine everything that we do. For far too long, the metric of success in our region has been how many inpatient psychiatric beds do we need? We need to change that mindset where the demand for inpatient psychiatrics is reflective of a failure of our ability to help folks stay at a lower level, which again requires that community care, that outpatient care, that ongoing care, and that vital component of care coordination. We also have to move into a data-driven system and really evaluating everything we're doing on the outcomes of helping people live better lives. I am excited about the momentum we have with a couple really important components of our system, our crisis hub network, our network of crisis stabilization units, along with an array of services that are attached to those, and the critical importance of care coordination. This is the work that's been begun over many years with UC San Diego, with the County of San Diego to provide person-centered care coordination. We have a lot of advances coming soon, a lot of investments coming soon, and central to these is going to be the CalAIM process and Medi-Cal waiver, which I think will provide some tremendous functionality in providing ongoing and sustained funding in a meaningful way as we work towards this person-centered, getting the right person, the right care at the right time in the right way. And so I'm very excited about what's happening and where we're going, and I look forward to the presentation ahead of us. And with that, let me turn it over to Dr. Bergman and Nick Machione for their presentation, and then we will hear from public speakers in return for any board comments or discussion.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. Last month, I presented on the serious impacts of COVID-19 for our community's behavioral health. And as the pandemic shifts into a new chapter, likely with a protracted period of economic recovery and social adjustment, it'll be critical for our county to proactively consider and address behavioral health needs. Fortunately, our work building a better behavioral health system in San Diego and addressing decades-old systemic challenges is well underway. Today, and with acknowledgement that May is Mental Health Month, you'll see green ribbons on some lapels today, I'll be presenting a review and update of our work in behavioral health over the last years, focusing on our broad vision, underlying strategy, project progress, and forward-looking direction. The last few years have been a period of extraordinary activity in behavioral health in San Diego County. In late 2018, we began articulating a direction for building better behavioral health care through a more cohesive continuum of care, regionally distributed across the county. This work has been founded on strategic emphases refined over the last 2 years and aligned with your board's leadership, with a particular focus on social stratification and behavioral health epidemiology and equity over the last year. The urgency of need hasn't allowed for a delay in establishing new service models and new service capacity. So as we've been engaged in strategy and design, we've already been making substantial investments that are bringing this vision to life and even now impacting the lives of San Diegans. I'll give updates on progress to date with many of the most important of these initiatives and timelines for future work. I'll note that one of our recommendations with this board letter is to change the cadence of our reporting to your board. While we've been returning to the board on a quarterly basis to give updates on continuum of care work, as we continue to shift toward an emphasis on implementation, we hope to return to this board with reports on progress better aligned with the many milestones ahead. Our approach begins with an acknowledgement that we currently have a system primarily driven by and oriented around behavioral health crises, and that the majority of our investments and overall community costs are consistent with that. Where mainstream American healthcare has been working to shift from an acute injury or disease model to a chronic care model, with service predominantly located in outpatient community clinic settings, that shift in behavioral health has lagged. In behavioral health, inpatient psychiatric care for acute crises, as well as other basically non-therapeutic population and crisis management response, has been the linchpin of care systems across the country and the sites of greatest investment. Though we know that improvement in well-being and often full recovery is possible even for those with the most serious psychiatric disease, indications of our emphasis on crises abound. People with mental health diagnosis are hospitalized at 5 times the rate of those without. There are over 54,000 calls to 911 every year that are for mental health reasons in San Diego County. And our county jail manages more people with behavioral health conditions than any other local institution, with the overrepresentation of certain communities there that has become customary across the U.S. We see, for example, a markedly greater proportion of African Americans receiving mental health services in our jails than within our community-based mental health systems. We have a heroic workforce and expert community of providers, but we have lacked cohesion, consistency of vision, and most importantly, infrastructure necessary not just to meet emergent demand, but to understand and even anticipate needs and then ultimately drive need for crisis services down. But with clarity of vision and collective commitment, we can invert this dynamic. So how do we turn this pyramid right side up so that the proportional investments that we'll make in preventive and continuous care will drive down need for and costs associated with behavioral health crisis? For us, this begins with the establishment of a guiding framework supported by 3 strategic pillars. The first of these is a commitment to a population health approach. While we are a health plan responsible for management of Medi-Cal enrollees with serious mental illness and substance use disorders, our approach has to be driven by the population's overall health and by the distribution of social determinants of health and behavioral health risk across our diverse county. This is why our department has established a behavioral health chief population health officer, along with a team of epidemiologists devoted to behavioral health. We are building capacity so that we're able to assess not just whether a particular program works for those who access it, but the deeper question of what its impact may be on the county's population health. The establishment of key population health metrics, measured consistently and in a timely fashion, is driving the work of this team and is the engine for behavioral health services program and service investments that we're making through a triple aim approach. The triple aim, again, is the Institute for Healthcare Improvement model, giving us guidance that current term investments in improved population health and individual outcomes will necessarily result in cost savings as more expensive crisis and acute care services become smaller proportion of overall spending. The closest and clearest targets of our efforts to shift expenditure through a triple aim approach are reductions in inpatient hospitalizations for psychiatric care and in diverting people with behavioral health conditions from expensive entanglements with law enforcement. As we've previously reported, our department currently spends nearly $60 million per year of realignment funding on psychiatric hospitalizations across the county. These are not total costs, but just the local matching funds that we use discretionary monies to cover. Total community cost savings opportunities are, of course, much higher. To change and improve outcomes that will drive these costs down, we're working now to shift how people get access to care in moments of crisis. And we're working to change the trajectories of experiences in care, to achieve more continuous engagement and to help more people achieve greater uninterrupted mental health wellness. I'll now talk briefly through some of the actual work that we've been doing toward these ends, grouping the services and initiatives that I'll discuss into 3 categories: crisis stabilization and diversionary services, inpatient and long-term care, and integrated health hubs, which will be the cornerstones of a regionally distributed system of care in the future. Our predominant focus in the first category has been on crisis stabilization units, or CSUs. These may be either hospital or community-based and are meant to divert patients with primary behavioral health needs from medical emergency departments, which typically aren't equipped to handle behavioral health crisis, and which therefore tend either to dispose patients to inpatient care, often unnecessarily, or discharge them to the street without sufficient care on site or proper connections to ongoing care. Between July and February of this fiscal year, our San Diego County Psych Hospital Crisis Stabilization Unit has treated over 3,500 patients, 61% of whom have been discharged without needing inpatient care. Without the CSU, a majority of these patients would have been occupying precious bed space at no care benefit to themselves. In collaboration with the district attorney, who highlighted this service as a stakeholder recommendation in her blueprint for mental health reform, we've pushed for a regional approach, creating an ecosystem of CSU services. We now have 3 currently running, including a long-standing CSU at the San Diego County Psych Hospital and the CSU at Palomar Health, pictured on the left in its new home, built using a new modular technology with county support. Services at the South Region CSU at the Bayview campus at Paradise Valley Hospital began last month. And we have 2 CSUs in development and 2 in preliminary planning stages. The planned CSU in Vista has progressed through thickets of local political resistance, and as the timeline on the first row indicates, operations are expected to begin in late summer after completion of necessary tenant improvements. And a CSU in Oceanside, newly built into the North Coastal Live Well Health Center, is ahead of original schedules, with operations beginning in September. Additional CSUs in planning will further build out both hospital and community-based crisis stabilization capacity. The latter, of course, are especially meaningful opportunities to coordinate with law enforcement, as drop-off times for police or sheriff transporting a 5150 or LPS hold are best measured in minutes at community-based sites rather than in hours. And we anticipate a high percentage of 5150 holds being relatively quickly resolved in community-based CSUs, owing to excellent care. In order to accelerate this utility, we're asking today for your board to approve an adjustment to 5150 guidance, clarifying that community-based CSUs are appropriate sites for such transport and drop-off. These clinical settings, in coordination with newly established mobile crisis response teams, or MCRTs, should do a lot to help people in behavioral health crisis avoid contact with law enforcement and instead be put in the immediate care of clinicians, giving them the best opportunity to get connected to additional ongoing care that will make them well. The North Coastal MCRT has begun operations, and thanks to an item brought forward by your board last month, will extend hours of operation in the near future and be better coordinated with law enforcement. The further expansion of MCRT countywide has been in procurement, and the notice of intent to award was just posted yesterday. Our effort to divert those with behavioral health crisis from criminal justice involvement will be significantly bolstered by an item that does not appear on any timeline in today's presentation, but which represents a sea change in the county's approach. This is the newly established collaborative effort involving both the Sheriff's Department and Health and Human Services Agency to optimize care and the public health impacts of the county's jail health services. Over the last few months, we've been working through preliminary planning phases and now are working with the support of an interagency agreement that indicates commitment to additional county care staff toward improved health and wellness for those touching our county's jails. For those for whom community-based inpatient care is medically necessary and appropriate, we've been working to build service capacity and to build care continuum connections in ways that make sense for both patients and care providers. The new psychiatric health facility at Tri-City Medical Center is emblematic of these converging lines of work. This service, the result of an agreement between the county and Tri-City Medical Center brought before this board in late 2019, fills a gaping need in the northern region of the county in the midst of multiple service closures. It's being developed with plans for it to be coordinated with adjacent continuum services, such as the two aforementioned CSUs in the northern region. And our agreement with Tri-City Medical Center includes provisions to establish innovative incentive payment mechanisms that have become, in concept, the foundation for broader work that we've been doing on inpatient psychiatric payment reform in San Diego County. As the images on this slide suggest, there's already been substantial design work accomplished on the Tri-City Psychiatric Health Facility, and the facility itself promises to be a symbol in the community and county of the kind of architectural asset that should be associated with care for mental illness. At this point, OSHPA's submission and review is expected to begin in late May, and we anticipate construction beginning in April 2022 and being completed by May 2023. Another noteworthy initiative driven by current needs to address inpatient care is a recent emphasis in departmental investments on long-term care capacity. Especially in the context of the pandemic-driven hospital surge, there have been dire consequences of the frequent backlog of patients in inpatient psychiatric care who no longer meet acuity thresholds, but who don't have any place to be discharged. This clog and flow, for example, has impacted emergency departments, where there have been pronounced upticks in behavioral health boarding during the pandemic because of a lack of bed availability. Recent behavioral health services investments in additional assertive community treatment slots and the tripling of rates for the Board and Care Augmented Services Program, currently winding down a round of procurement, should provide a measure of relief to this dynamic as suitable long-term post-discharge settings come online. The most abiding and significant changes to the traditional flow of patients into and out of hospital inpatient care will be achieved through plans for regionally distributed behavioral health hubs throughout the county in the central, north, south, and east regions, as well as a children's hub to be developed in collaboration with Rady Children's Hospital. Behavioral health hubs will be integrated care environments designed to accelerate transition from behavioral health crisis to sustainable, continuous chronic care management. An underlying principle is that these care hubs reflect the integration of physical and behavioral health and healthcare, and thus a core tenet will be that they're developed in partnership with mainstream healthcare providers. Before the pandemic, plans were put in place and agreements progressed with several regionally distributed partners. In the midst of the pandemic, we suspended work with all but Rady Children's Hospital and in the central region, where through a partnership with UCSD, we've begun working on plans for a new psychiatric facility to include an array of services, including inpatient, forensic, step-down, and an innovative care coordination program that we are launching in the next months in collaboration with UCSD and with partnership and a community investment of $1 million from Blue Shield Promise, the Medi-Cal health plan. Planning for the 3rd Avenue located Central Region Hub has progressed at a quickening clip over the last months, especially as we folded into our work new leadership with Dr. Jeff Daskalakis at the Department of Psychiatry, and as we've established a shared county UC Health clinical leadership position to facilitate overall planning. In the next week, we anticipate transitioning from service design to facility and infrastructure review and planning for the Central Region Hub. We have operations and governance agreements in draft and are looking towards a completion date of mid-2025. The shifting of the San Diego County Psych Hospital under UCSD General Acute Care Hospital licensure remains on track to precede the opening of the new Central Region Hub by approximately 2.5 years. And we are nearly prepared to make a preliminary submission to OSHPA to move forward the build-out of a new standalone psychiatric service at Edgemoor Hospital, which is a necessary step in our licensure plans for the county psych hospital that will also enable us better to serve those with psychiatric needs who are nursing home patients, and coupled with plans for an adjacent CSU, will serve the surrounding communities as well and provide significant efficiency for law enforcement. I want to close by highlighting a body of work that is distinct from but also critical to the projects that I've just reviewed and other work that our department will be developing. The Community Experience Project is a collaboration with various academic units at UCSD, including the School of Public Health and our epidemiology unit, the centerpiece of which is the creation of a behavioral health equity index. The index will be a quantitative measure of behavioral health need and equity across the county, hinged not just on already established service utilization, but on 4 data domains that will, for the first time, truly enable our department to understand where taxpayer investments toward behavioral health should best be made, and will enable the more thoughtful, collaborative development of services. The Behavioral Health Equity Index will combine annual census data, care utilization, and community survey data with data collected in collaboration with communities and community coalitions across the county through a community-based participatory research model, and will be updated annually so that we're able to track inequities and changes in equity over time. We are anticipating the beta version of the Behavioral Health Equity Index to roll out before the end of the current fiscal year. This board has highlighted the need for attention to equity in measurement and in resource distribution. Anticipating that direction and responding to it, we're building mechanisms to move our work forward in sync with this board's leadership and direction so that we're not only ensuring that the entire population on balance is doing better, but that communities suffering disproportionately receive attention and care in proportion to their need. Finally, the recommended actions with this item are for the board to receive an update on advancing the behavioral health continuum of care, to direct the Chief Administrative Officer to sunset select time-certain reporting and to shift reporting for the behavioral health continuum of care to coincide with significant developments, and to adopt the updated Lanterman-Petrus Short, or LPS designation guidelines and processes for facilities within San Diego County revised to expand eligibility to all programs that meet applicable state and local requirements. This concludes our presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bergman, for the presentation. Let me ask first, before we go to my colleagues, the clerk, if we have any requests for public comment on this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. There are no requests to speak on this item.
All right, let me go to my colleagues and ask if there's any requests for comments or questions on this item.
Oops, Chair Fletcher?
Yeah, one second. Let's
sorry.
See if we can restore the screen to the board. Okay, go ahead, Vice Chair Vargas.
Sorry, I'm going to use my hand more often. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. The screen was still on the presentation, so I couldn't see you. We'll go Vice Chair Vargas and then Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you for that presentation, and thank you, Chair, for your leadership on this matter. I'm really excited that we are really looking at approaching this from a system driven by crisis to one that focuses on prevention and continued coordinated care. I think this is great. I am very concerned, particularly about our youth population, and particularly right now under the pandemic. I know it's taking a huge toll on them. I've been having a lot of conversations with our superintendents and our school board members, particularly from my district, and they have expressed a lot of concerns around mental health care. And so as we're going back to school, I'm interested in exploring opportunities. I know that there was some component of it, but to strengthen our partnership with the dedicated resources and really thinking about, because we are going to be receiving the ARPA funding, to see if there is some opportunities to assessing the mental health of our students to identify their needs. So being a little bit more granular around this. I also would like for us, as we work on the post-pandemic recovery, to explore how some of the ARPA funding can help address mental health needs that are really addressing it from a culturally competent and in-language services as well, and really this concept of meeting people where they're at, which I think it's the overall concept, but I want to make sure I emphasize that because I mean it's really important, particularly because I'm really committed to working with our schools who in District 1 have been absolutely impacted. And then with the efforts underway around the Behavioral Health Department with UCSD Health Services Research and Rady's Children's Hospital, I really, to develop this community experience project, I'm just really glad to see that we're going to establish a process to identify and assess unmet behavioral health needs. I am particularly interested in the Behavioral Equity Index and how we're going to highlight populations and neighborhoods at greater risk for unmet behavioral health needs, and really thinking about how we're going to be able to have that information as part of our decision-making process as we intentionally identify where the services are needed. And I think it's a great way for us to be able to connect it to the budget equity assessment tool that we had just approved as a board last time around. And so I just want to say thank you for all the work. I am assuming that there's going to be there's specific timing for the community experience project to be completed, and I wasn't sure that I got that. So if somebody can just clarify that for me, I would appreciate it, and I'm happy to support this item, Supervisor Fletcher.
Thank you. Dr. Bergman, you want to address some of those questions?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. So I mentioned that the beta version of the Equity Index will be with us by the end of this fiscal year. So that will be a version that includes the quantitative data domains that I mentioned, the component that involves community-based participatory research, which is, of course, an extremely important methodology for us to really understand what's happening across our diverse county. It will follow in sort of a second phase of the work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dr. Bergman, for your presentation today. I'm very excited to be a partner with you here in North County for the opening up of the community-based CSUs in Vista and Oceanside, and also the psychiatric facility at Tri-City Hospital. Thank you very much. I got a question, though, for you. As part of the recommendations, one of them is to adopt the Lanterman-Petrus short designation for facilities, which primarily allows for involuntary evaluation at these crisis stabilization units. And I understand how that works for 5150s and how that's necessary because 5150s are either a danger to themselves or to other people. But one of the great benefits of the CSUs that I used in trying to push for these in North County is the fact that families can bring in a loved one, either, that's going through a behavioral health crisis or something like that, as opposed to bringing them to a ER. So how does this involuntary evaluation part of the Lanterman-Petrus short designation work with family members who bring somebody in and somebody's refusing service to the, I'm just kind of curious how that works.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Supervisor. It actually works very seamlessly, and we've modeled our expectations for this this patient mix on work that's been done already in other jurisdictions. For example, in Riverside County, there are such community-based CSUs where law enforcement frequently transport 5150s at the same time that services are accessed via walk-in by family members or by individuals. What becomes really important is establishing a kind of setting culture that feels welcoming. And so though I understand what informs your question, it feels like those would be very disparate populations and maybe disparate experiences. It's possible with the right staffing model and the right engagement to actually create a very seamless institutional culture so that while law enforcement will be transporting 5150s, it will not at all kind of reflect conflict or violence. We anticipate in most cases will be a very kind of seamless transition. Part of why I would just quickly add, we think that this LPS designation in these sites is important is because they're so effective at managing 5150 holds. And we anticipate that we will be able to resolve a lot of the 5150 holds that come in these settings before 72 hours. And so before we would, kind of be required to transport to an inpatient psychiatric service.
I guess to be more specific, though, if a family brings in, let's say, a 21-year-old adult that is having, behavioral health problems, and that 21-year-old is deciding they don't want to be there. So how does this involuntary evaluation happen? Does they have to be determined to be a harm to themselves or others by the doctors there before they can do that? I'm just trying to. I get it with the 5150s, and I'm not really concerned about the mixing of the two, but how is it handled for community members who come in who are brought in by their family and maybe it's combative, circumstance where the person is refusing treatment or help?
Well, so the kind of standard for the application of the hold is consistent, Supervisor Desmond, as it is, kind of in other settings consistent with state law. So the assessment needs to be conducted by a clinician in order to sustain that hold. So they can be brought in on a 5150 in order to actually execute the hold. The clinician would need to make that determination.
So they would also be making that same determination on somebody that was not brought in under a 5150. Is that true?
Well, I mean, clinicians would be making determinations about best, kind of course of care or regimen on everybody. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I guess I'm just concerned with the involuntary versus voluntary. I guess if the clinicians determine that this person's a danger to themselves, just like a 5150, then they can do the hold and keep them based on the outcome. Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted that clarification. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve item 11 here as stated by our Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Dr. Bergman, just for get clarity, so I understand, because I think Supervisor Desmond raises a good question. Essentially, anyone brought to a facility is subject to the same evaluation, and if it is determined by the mental health staff on site that they warrant a 5150 hold, then that can be placed. But again, it's kind of irrespective of who brings them or how brings them. It's more a clinical assessment of the status of the individual and do they meet the legal threshold or not. Is that correct?
5150 hold is determined by a clinician. That's right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the comments, Supervisor Desmond. Any other questions from my colleagues or comments? Not seeing any. I will second the motion. We have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by myself to adopt the 3 recommendations in agenda item 11. I want to thank Dr. Bergman, Mr. Mascione, and the entire team for all of their work on this, and I look forward to continued robust engagement as we really chart a better way for behavioral health. With that, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, next we're going to go to agenda item 10. This is going to be receive the update on the COVID-19 response. We will give our staff a moment to get reset. After we do item 10, then we will return to the file in sequential order from beginning until end. And so with this, let me turn it over to our Health and Human Services staff for their COVID update presentation.
Before they begin the presentation, any members of the public that requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. That's for item 10. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. Today's presentation will feature Dr. Wilma Wooten for an update on public health as well as state's tiered system. We'll then have Nick Mascione for an update on vaccination efforts underway throughout the county, as well as the update on outreach, education, and communication efforts. Andy Pease will provide an update on finance and information on funding sources. And finally, David Estrella will provide an update on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Without further ado, Dr. Wooten, over to you.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. Since the last presentation to your board on April 6th, this is the current EpiCurve. This slide shows COVID-19 cases by onset of illness and provides a historical overview to date. Since the stay-at-home order was lifted by the state on January 25th, and with continued vaccinations now over 2.83 million, daily cases by illness of onset have continued to decline. In a close-up view, from January 1st through May 2nd, daily case counts by date reported have also continued to wane. Looking at this closer in the 14-day period from April 19th through May 2nd, daily case counts have been below 350. And over the last 10 days of this period, with the exception of 1 day, cases reported have been below 200. Now, this table provides a summary of cumulative cases with a breakdown by age, gender, hospitalization, ICU admission, and deaths. These numbers are through 11:59 Sunday, May 2nd, which show a total of 276,692 positive COVID-19 cases reported. The age range of all cases is from 0 to 108 years of age, with a median age of 35. The 20 to 49-year-old age group continues to comprise just over 54% of all cases, or 150,293 of the total number. Gender distribution remains unchanged. Hospitalizations make up 5.5%, or 15,257 of the total number of cases. Of these hospitalizations, individuals over the age of 50 comprise approximately 74%, or 11,331 cases. Furthermore, 1,683 of those hospitalized have been admitted to the ICU. These numbers also are decreasing and make up approximately 0.6% of the total number of cases and 11% of the total number of those hospitalized. The total number of cases include also 3,712 deaths, or 1.3% of all cases. It is to be noted that 1,726 of the deaths occurred in 2020, and 1,857 have occurred over the past 4 months. The age range for those who have died is 10 to 106 years of age, and the median age is 77. All of these data and more information can be found on the county's website for coronavirus at www.coronavirus-sd.com. Now, looking at the trends for hospitalization and ICU admissions, the next 6 slides share the percentage decrease for 30, 14, and 7-day periods. These figures show the status of the San Diego County's non-federal adult and pediatric hospital beds. In the past 30 days, from April 3rd through May 2nd, hospital census data show a decreasing trend of 23%. Looking at the 14-day period from April 19th to May 2nd, hospital census data show a decreasing trend of 21%. And in the 7-day period from April 6th through May 2nd, hospital census data show a decreasing trend of 8%. With the focus on ICU admissions, in the 30-day period from April 3rd through May 2nd, ICU census data show a decreasing trend of 23%. And for the period from April 19th through May 2nd, ICU census decreased by 34%. And last, in the 7-day period from April 26th through May 2nd, ICU census decreased by 5%. Now, moving to the Triggers dashboard, this monitors 3 focus areas: epidemiology or surveillance, healthcare or hospital capacity, and public health or our response. Only one of the 13 triggers currently is abnormal, and that is community outbreaks. It is very encouraging, however, to see that community outbreaks also have continued to decrease during the past months of this year. And currently there have been 18 outbreaks in the 7-day period from April 26th through May 2nd. Now, the state's monitoring system includes 3 core metrics, as we have heard throughout this pandemic since August of 2020: case rate, testing positivity, and the health equity metric. For the week of April 14th through April 24th, the county's unadjusted case rate was calculated by staff to be 5.5 and the adjusted case rate at 5.2, which is the orange tier. The test positivity percentage is 1.9%, which places us in the yellow tier. The health equity metric evaluates the testing positivity rate of areas that experience the least healthy conditions in the county. For the same reporting period, health equity testing percentage is 2.6, which is also the orange tier. Now, although the adjusted case rate has been within the threshold of the red tier for the past 3 weeks, it is not expected that the county will move back to the red tier. CDPH, or the California Department of Public Health, recently advised that unless there are extenuating circumstances, a county will only move to a more restrictive tier if hospitalizations are increasing significantly among vulnerable individuals, especially among vaccinated individuals, and both testing positivity and adjusted case rate show a concerning increase in transmission. The state is expected to publicly post its state metric calculations by noon today, and the metrics for San Diego County may differ slightly than what we have shared with you here today. Now, moving to the next slide, the state is currently operating on the Blueprint for a Safer Economy framework, but plan to move to beyond the blueprint on June 15th. Statewide transmission of COVID-19 is decreasing. Currently, as of Monday, May 3rd, 0 counties are in the purple tier, which is widespread transmission. 13 counties are in the red tier, substantial transmission. 41 counties are in the orange tier, which is moderate transmission, and 4 counties are in the yellow tier, which is minimal transmission. These numbers will change as the newly posted information will be released today by the state. Now, going to the next slide, the declining COVID-19 daily case counts is certainly good news. However, the detection of COVID-19 variants continues to be a public health threat. 7 variants have been found in San Diego County: the UK, the Brazilian, the 2 West Coast, the South African, and now the New York and India variants. As of Monday, or rather, the B117, or the UK variant, is most noted. As of Monday, May 2nd, in San Diego County, 773 confirmed cases of the UK variant have been reported, which is 381 more cases than reported to your board 3 weeks ago. Of these total cases, there have been 15 hospitalizations, which is 6 more than reported at the last report, and 1 death, which thankfully is unchanged. The median age is 34 years, and the age range is 0 to 93 years of age. The gender distribution is very similar to the total number of case counts. Approximately 53% are female, and almost 47% are male. Regarding other variants, 70 cases of the P1, or the Brazilian variant, have been found. This is 67 more cases than what was last reported to your board. 245 cases of the 2 West Coast variants, B1427 at 68 cases, and the B1429, 177 cases have been reported. To date, 1 case of the South African variant, or B1351, have been identified locally. On Thursday, this last Thursday, April 29th, there were 2 new variants identified in San Diego. B15261, better known as the New York variant, and the B1617, better known as the India variant. Staff members will continue to closely monitor these new variants and any others that are detected. Now, lastly, add to your last board meeting, Supervisor Desmond asked about the status of the local health and the local emergencies. To provide context, given COVID-19 is and continues to be a new coronavirus, on January 30th of last year, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a public health emergency. On January 31st, the Health and Human Services Agency Secretary declared COVID-19 a public health emergency for the United States. As a result of the continued consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, the nation's public health emergency has been renewed multiple times and is still in effect. Then on February 14th, anticipating future events related to the pandemic, the county declared an emergency as an act of proactive protection for our community to prevent the preventable. Declaring a local emergency and a local health emergency empowered and continues to empower the county to more effectively respond to COVID-19 issues from a procurement, contracting, and personnel perspective. It also allows the county to seek and utilize mutual aid, obtain FEMA reimbursement, and ensure that the county's health professionals and other local stakeholders have all the necessary tools at their disposal. This includes supporting hospitals with equipment and supply availability, including protective respirators. The county continues to make swift and significant efforts to address the impact of COVID-19 in order to protect and preserve public health and safety. Now, at the national levels, as we look ahead in terms of rescinding the emergencies, we know that there is still significant COVID-19 prevalence in communities, and additional resources will be needed to continue to respond effectively. This again is at the national, state, as well as all local levels across most of the nation. In order to rescind the emergencies, there will need to be lower case counts, as well as case rates and testing positivity. And we will need to continue to have decreased hospitalization counts and death rates. There is still work to be done in order to increase vaccination efforts, including the preparation for and vaccination of those children 15 years of age and younger, as well as any future boosters to address the numerous variants mentioned previously. We will continue to align with the California Department of Public Health and the state's emergency declaration. We have been informed by the state that it is anticipated that the state's declaration will extend through to the end of 2021 to continue to support response efforts, including vaccination activities. And lastly, in response to this question, this slide shows research staff has done to find out what researchers are looking at in terms of the metrics that would be needed to rescind emergencies. This slide shows research from Johns Hopkins University, the University of Michigan, and the University of California, San Francisco. This sheds light on where we need to be for 4 metrics. The slide shows the definition of where a jurisdiction should be for case counts and testing positivity, hospitalizations, deaths, and vaccination rate. Based on the definitions for these 5 metrics, we have provided what this should look like for the U.S., California, and San Diego County compared to where we actually are currently. So drawing attention to San Diego County on the right of the slide, for case counts, Johns Hopkins University states that there should be no more than 0.5 cases per 100,000 population. For San Diego, this would be less than 17 cases per day and a testing positivity of less than 1%. Currently, the county has an average, 7-day average cases of 184 cases per day, and this is after a 7-day lag, and a test positivity of 1.9%. For hospitalizations, the definition for hospitalizations is to log at least 1 month of normal hospital operations without staff or equipment shortages. The county's goal is to have more than 50% of hospitals have at least a 22-day supply of PPE, as well as greater than 1 month of no staff or equipment shortages. Currently, 100% of hospitals have not reported any staffing, PPE, or equipment shortages in the past 60 days. Moving to deaths, no more than 100 COVID-19 deaths per day, or 0.003 deaths per day per 10,000 population. And based on the San Diego County's population, and to meet this benchmark, it has been calculated by staff that the county should have no more than 1 death per day. Now, we have met this metric after a 3-week lag and a 7-day average. Moving to vaccination rate, a target of 80% coverage of the population older than 65%, or rather older than 65 years of age, and 60 to 80% of those 64 years and older. As you can see, San Diego is better than the nation and state at 83.4% of the population 65 and older vaccinated with at least 1 dose. Of note, we can also share that approximately just over 73% of our population 75 and older have received either 1 dose of J&J or 2 doses of Pfizer or Moderna, making them fully vaccinated. The vaccination of 64 years and younger is lagging behind, so more work is definitely needed there. When the state releases its metrics related to ending the a state of emergency, the county plans on following the guidance accordingly. So in closing, as cases are declining and more people are vaccinated, we are continuously encouraged. As we wait for the arrival of more vaccines, all San Diegans are urged to continue following all preventive measures. As recommendations continue to be released by CDC and the state, please still wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear your mask. These actions are extremely important. Avoid median and large in-person gatherings or groups, and if you are sick, isolate at home and get tested. Now that everyone 16 years of age and older can be vaccinated, please get the COVID-19 vaccine, get vaccinated, and bring a couple of family members or friends even, as vaccinations are our pathway to continue to have economic recovery and to move us towards the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you to everyone for your continued efforts to help San Diegans be COVID safe. Now please welcome Agency Director Nick Mascione.
Thank you, Dr. Wooten. Good morning, Chair Fletcher, members of the board. Since we last presented to your board, we reached the significant point in the COVID-19 vaccination rollout. And as of April 15th, anyone 16 years and older who lives, works, or attends school in San Diego is eligible to be vaccinated. In the subsequent 2 weeks, supply of vaccine grew and our sites responded. It was for this moment that we have been so diligent about building a flexible vaccination ecosystem focusing on achieving health equity, accessibility, and convenience. With that system in place, with the support of our many hospital, clinic, city, and community partners, the largest segment of our county population to date became eligible to begin the vaccination journey. Now, as you may recall, the state appointed the Blue Shield of California as the third-party administrator for vaccines. And while we're seeing changes in the distribution of vaccine among providers, there is an overall positive trend of increased vaccine in San Diego, as you can see in this chart. The local health jurisdiction amounts shown in light blue are remaining steady. These amounts include what the County of San Diego utilizes, as well as other providers in our region that have signed on with Blue Shield, such as Sharp Healthcare with their vast network, and Rady Children's Hospital, who will play an increasingly important role as the vaccines approved for youth through the COVID Collaboration for Children. The state has also been increasing its investment of vaccine among the multi-county entities, such as Kaiser Permanente and UC San Diego Health System. Federally, the pharmacy programs and the Federally Qualified Health Centers program has seen some of the largest growth in our region. And these changes are positive and were expected as the state has expressed that they want to shift vaccinations back to the medical homes, and that means hospitals, medical clinics, and pharmacies. As the safety net provider for our region's most vulnerable, it was important for us to create and maintain a strong system of county hosted and operated locations, even with the change in the vaccination distribution to county sites. And while we focused on health equity locations, there are many, many more providers in our region. As you can see from this slide, San Diegans have more than 300 locations to get vaccinations just from superstations, county and partner sites, and the network of pharmacies. But on top of that, more than 170 providers are offering vaccinations. Clearly, we are in a place of ample supply and many access points. And we are darn proud of how far we've come. When rated by the per capita doses given, San Diego County is performing at the top among Southern California counties and one of the highest performing statewide. Last week, we announced that we had reached 1 million San Diegans fully vaccinated, reaching nearly 54% of our vaccination goal. Even more important is the people who we vaccinated. Through our concerted efforts for vulnerable populations, we've vaccinated over 84% of individuals 65 and older. And despite the setback from the pause in the J&J Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we've sent over 1,600 names of homebound individuals to our providers, and they've vaccinated now nearly 670, and more yet to come. And we're seeing record vaccination rates in the South region, which was hit particularly hard by COVID-19, as we know. For instance, nearly 66% of the entire population in South region has received at least one dose of COVID-19. Yes, we are halfway there, but our work is not done. The solid line in this trend line to date of the percent of the total population vaccinated shows that we have yet a way to go. And as you can see, to reach our goal of 100% by July 1st, we would need to keep our vaccination steady at 16,000 individuals fully vaccinated per day throughout the region. And unfortunately, nationally, there has been a slowing in vaccine uptake. However, on this slide, as we see, if we can go back to that slide, there is some good news for our county. Last week, we achieved 13,392 as a daily average across our county hosted and supported sites, plus an additional 6,500 daily average for federally qualified health centers and pharmacies, plus additional numbers that our hospitals are doing, well over 21,000 that we have done last week. That is a great sign of the partnership. So, next slide. We're racing to reach our goal, and so we are getting even more creative and tripling down on our efforts. As appointments and vaccination rates begin to slow, nationwide, statewide, and even here in San Diego, strategies are being implemented to increase utilization and make vaccines even more accessible. We know that getting these vaccines needs to be both easy and convenient. We are revisiting our operational strategies and our outreach and communication activities to help get the word out. When we were in short supply of the vaccine, it was more difficult for folks to make appointments. And we know that there were challenges with the second dose appointments as well. Now, with our full supply of vaccine, we're excited that all of our locations now can accept drop-ins, as well as offer appointments up to 7 days in advance to those who want a more guaranteed time slot. Drop-ins can be achieved for first or second doses. And even if it's been longer than 21 days for Pfizer or 28 days for Moderna from your first vaccination, you still and should get your second dose to get the maximum protection. It's not too late to vaccinate. And to make it easier to know where to go, the type of vaccine available each day for each site is listed on our county website. Whether it's the second dose or the first dose, there's no restrictions of where San Diego can go today. Starting this week, we are also extending our hours into the evening, realizing that many of those who want to be vaccinated have challenging schedules and may have been unable to get to one of our sites during its hours of operation. On Thursday, the following vaccination sites will be open from 1 to 8 p.m. at the South Regional Live-Well Center in Chula Vista, at the East Public Health Center in El Cajon, and at the North Coastal Live-Well Center in Oceanside. And for those who can't get to any one of our many sites throughout the county, we're also ramping up our pop-up and mobile efforts countywide. Our goal going forward is to ensure we offer both the traditional locations and to bring more vaccines to where people are at through our Live Well Mobile office and many community partnerships. Now, our media campaign for COVID-19 vaccine continues, and with the expansion of broadcast advertisements to country western, yes, that's country western, and even more youth-oriented stations. We'll be revisiting materials to focus on younger demographic increase on the focus of digital platforms such as Pandora and YouTube. And in a follow-up to this past January, we'll also be conducting another vaccine willingness survey this month to inform our insights. We'll continue to work closely with the community health worker partners who live, work, play in our communities, and responding to their input, we've developed door hangers to support in-person, door-to-door outreach efforts. And we're excited to extend this work even further by partnering with city jurisdictions, supporting their leadership as a force multiplier to bring culturally appropriate vaccine messaging to their communities. While we and our partners are moving full steam ahead with these efforts, we cannot do it alone. We need all San Diegans to come together now as a community to spread the news about the vaccine safety and availability. Together as San Diegans, we can protect those unable to get vaccinated and help get us back to the things we love. It is up to us to make this happen, and it's our unified message to San Diegans as follows. As Dr. Wooten pointed out, if you've not been vaccinated, get vaccinated now. If you have received your first dose, make sure you get your second dose now. And if you are fully vaccinated, help a family member, a friend, or a neighbor find a convenient location to get vaccinated now. With that, next up is Andy Pease, who will provide the finance update. Andy?
Thank you, Nick. Good morning. The county's weekly spend rate for our COVID response is estimated at approximately $11.8 million a week. This is up about $200,000 from what I reported in early April. As expected, we continue to see a slight increase in the vaccination spending with slight reductions in T3 and overall county response efforts. If this trend continues, we estimate we will spend around $300 million between January of this year and the close of our fiscal year in June for the programs you see listed. Our funding is a combination of federal and state stimulus funds, FEMA, anticipated third-party insurance, and as needed, if needed, general fund balance. One of our primary funding sources will be the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or what we call ARPA. On April 6th, we presented to your board a framework in the use of ARPA and related funds totaling close to $1 billion. Before you is the framework you approved in concept, subject to finalizing once we receive the funding and guidelines in the use of these dollars. As of today, we have yet to receive the guidelines and we have yet to receive the money. Under ARPA regulations, we should receive half of our allocation by May 11th, and then we'll have to wait a minimum of a year to receive the other half of these dollars. We understand that the guidelines are to be issued around the same time as we receive our initial allocation, so we expect it by next week. We'll keep your board apprised when these funds and guidelines are received, and we'll be returning to your board for specific use of these funds and proposed programs, including recommendations to establish appropriations for current year costs and future costs. Now, your board has taken actions in approving some specific uses of ARPA subject to allowance under the pending guidelines. These actions include, back on February 9th, your board approved $30 million allocated for the Small Business Stimulus Grant Program using ARPA if allowed. And then on April 6th, when your board approved the in-concept framework, that total for the Small Business Grant Program was increased to $50 million. And your board also approved an allocation methodology using an equity model for distribution. Also on April 6th, your board approved the use of ARPA to cover permit fee waivers for the events industry, estimated at a total of $1.7 million. Barring other direction given by this board, if allowable under ARPA guidelines, this $1.7 million will be taken from the $50 million allocated under the Small Business Stimulus Grant component. Now, in addition to actions your board has taken thus far, you have several items docketed for today as well as tomorrow, which also reference the use of ARPA dollars. Today's item 12 is a recommendation to direct the CAO to analyze the rental payment shortfalls and housing assistance needs among small-scale independent property owners and develop a rental assistance program tailored to meet their needs. Funding is to be from the ARPA framework and earmarked from those components that make up about $100 million within the framework dedicated for tenant protections, homeless services, and hotel-motel acquisitions. Today's item number 25 includes a recommendation to direct the CAO to allocate $10 million in ARPA funds out of the framework that's slated of $85 million for homeless services for the creation of a shallow rent subsidy program and associated administrative costs. And there's also a recommendation, to the extent authorized by law, to direct the CAO to allocate $1 million of the forthcoming ARPA $85 million for the expanded outreach and for the exploration of ways to enhance the awareness efforts that are taking place for the ERAP program. For tomorrow at the May 5th board hearing, item 1, this is a return to the board from April 7th, when the Department of Environmental Health and Quality presented their planned fee increases, and the board directed them to return with alternate funding source options. This item would authorize the use of approximately $648,000 in ARPA funds to cover the fiscal year 21-22 DEHQ fee increases. Now, if this item is approved, and should guidelines allow the use of ARPA, barring direction from your board, we'd take the funding again from the Small Business Stimulus Grant component. At the May 5th board hearing, item 10 is a recommendation to waive next year's annual permit fees, not just the increase, but the permit fees, the total ones for restaurants estimated at $7.5 million. And the fiscal impact references the use of ARPA funds. If this item is approved, and should guidelines allow the use of ARPA, again, barring direction from your board, we would take the $7.5 million from the Small Business Stimulus Grant component. This adjustment, associated with all the items and others mentioned, would result in a remaining balance of just over $40 million for the Small Business Stimulus Grant component of the framework, if approved. Also, at the May 5th board hearing, item 18 is a recommendation to direct the CAO to submit a letter to SANDAG and Caltrans committing funds of up to $1.4 million for bridging the Digital Divide SR67 fiber project, and to include these funds in the framework for ARPA funding, if allowable. Should this item pass, subject to direction from the board, these funds would come out of the infrastructure component of the ARPA framework. I believe that captures the actions taken or to be considered by this board to date. For my final slide, there are several recommendations in today's item I'd like to make note of. Recommendation 5 is to authorize HHSA to apply for and accept funding through the Department of Health and Human Services for the Community Health Workers for COVID Response and Resilient Communities grant, which supports training and deployment of community health workers to respond to and build community reliance to fight COVID-19 through addressing existing health disparities. Recommendation 6 requests authority to issue competitive solicitations, should we receive the grant that I just mentioned, to develop the capacity of the community health workers workforce, including the establishment of a formal training program. Recommendation 7 is authority to accept $13.1 million in supplemental grant funding to the California Department of Public Health from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention for Immunization, Local Assistance for COVID-19 Vaccination Services for the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. And then finally, recommendation 8 is to adopt a resolution waiving event industry fees. This is a follow-up action in response to your board, who on April 6th directed the CAO to return within 30 days with a resolution for a fee waiver for permit fees incurred by the events industry. I'll at this time turn it over to David Estrella, who will provide you an update on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
Good morning. The county received 2 allocations to support low-income renters impacted by COVID-19. In January of 2021, the county received a direct allocation of $48.8 million from the U.S. Department of the Treasury. The county must award 65% of the funding, which is $31.7 million, by September 2021, and expend 100% of the funding by September 2022. Senate Bill SB 91 established the State of California's program for administering its share of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP, from the Treasury. The county applied for block grant funding under SB 91 to receive $53.2 million for direct assistance and $5 million for program administration and outreach, totaling $58.2 million. As part of the state block grant requirements, the county must obligate 65% of the funding, which is $37.8 million, by June 2021. and expend 100% of the funding by August 2021. The total amount available to provide rent and utilities assistance is $107 million. As of April 26th, the county has received 12,249 applications that are eligible for review. This figure excludes applications that do not meet initial eligibility thresholds. For example, application for the household is out of the jurisdiction, over income, or not a renter. The county prioritized review of applications based on federal, state, and county prioritization categories. This slide shows the percentage of applications that meet the 4 prioritization categories. 94% of applicants are at or below 50% area median income. 62% have been unemployed for over 90 days. 38% of applicants are single-parent households, and 72% reside in areas with the least access to healthy opportunities based on the Healthy Places Index. As of today, if no other applications were received, the county is conservatively estimating that 6,000 of the submitted applications will be determined eligible, resulting in $28.6 million in awards. This estimate is the worst-case scenario, because it is based on the previous ERAP program yield rate. If actual program yield rates are higher, the resulting award amount will be higher as well. With enhanced efforts, we know additional applications will come in throughout the month, and we will be much closer in meeting the state's requirement and obligating the $37.8 million by the end of May. In order to reach as many people as possible, the county has done significant outreach through various methods. The online application can be accessed in English, Spanish, Arabic, Tagalog, and Mandarin. Those lacking internet access or needing additional assistance can call and have a county representative take the application over the phone. How to apply videos have been posted on the county ERAP page. The county has also used paid advertising through social media. We have also leveraged an extensive community network. This includes working directly with the 9 community sectors and 12 community subsectors established as part of the county COVID response. These sectors represent faith-based organizations, educational institutions, healthcare providers, and local business groups that reach a broad regional audience. The county has also distributed program information through contracted community partners, utilizing community health workers, also known as promotoras, that provide outreach and education and contact tracing as part of the county COVID response. Our local apartment associations and utility providers were also provided outreach toolkit materials for distributions to members and customers. Examples of program metrics include 800,000 Nextdoor app users notified within the county's jurisdiction, 118,000 county email distribution list subscribers received program information. Text messages have also been sent to 61,000 households receiving certain HHSA program benefits. COVID response sector telebriefings average 5,000 total viewers per month, and email blasts were sent to over 16,000 stakeholders. The San Diego Housing Federation social media and email distribution list also has over 7,800 subscribers. In an effort to expand the number of applications, the county plans to enhance outreach activities on all fronts. Planned efforts include sending postcard mailers to over 500,000 residential addresses, securing community-based organization contracted services to provide outreach and application assistance, partnering with 211 to send text messages to residents, radio advertisements through iHeartRadio that will reach approximately 680,000 individuals, and newspaper and social media advertisements through the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint, El Latino, and Filipino Times that reach an audience of almost 1 million people. This concludes our presentation, and now I'd like to hand it over to Don Stoyer. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let me review all the recommendations in today's board letter. In addition to receiving the update, we recommend your board take the following additional actions. ratify all actions taken in response to the local health emergency and local emergency, authorize the Director of Purchasing and Contracting, upon successful negotiations and the determination of a fair and reasonable price, to amend the contract with RO Health Incorporated to extend the term through June 30, 2022, subject to the availability of funds, and to amend the contract as required to reflect changes to services and funding allocations, subject to the approval of the county's agency director. Authorize an amendment to the County Health Worker Communication and Outreach Services contracts listed in Attachment A. If your board approves this recommendation, Purchasing and Contracting will amend these contracts for 3 two-month option periods through December of 2021. This will allow county flexibility for reviewing outcomes, impacts, and community needs prior to future option periods. Authorize the county's agency director or designee to apply for and accept funding through Department of Health and Human Services for the Community Health Workers for COVID Response and Resilient Communities Grant. If approved, funds referenced in this recommendation 5 could be used to support community health worker training and coordination to build capacity. For recommendation 6 requests authorization for the Director of Purchasing and Contracting to issue competitive solicitations for community health workers for COVID response and resilient communities grant funds for capacity building, and upon successful negotiations and determination of a fair and reasonable price, award 1 or more contracts for a period of up to 1 year and up to 2 option years, subject to funding availability. Authorize the acceptance of $13,134,740 in supplemental grant funding through CDPH from the CDC and Prevention for Immunization Local Assistance for COVID-19 Vaccination Services for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022, and authorize the clerk of the board to execute all required documents upon receipt, including any annual extensions, amendments, and/or revisions thereto that do not materially impact or alter the services or funding level. Adopt a resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the Board of Supervisors of County of San Diego Waiving Event Industry Fees." Authorize an extension of the rent deferral period directed by the San Diego County Board of Supervisors on April 7th of 2020 for renters of the County of San Diego owned commercial or residential property in the incorporated and unincorporated areas, including the lease agreements outlined in the April 24th, 2020 memo to the board contained in Attachment C in today's board letter titled, "County of San Diego Requirements that May Inhibit Businesses Impacted by Coronavirus Global Emergency from Swiftly Reopening Once the Public Health Order is Lifted." The repayment period shall begin January 1st, 2022, and rent deferrals for county leases shall otherwise remain the same as earlier directed by the board. And finally, take any other actions necessary to address the COVID-19 pandemic emergency response. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. We're going to go to our public speakers, and then we need to come back. And when we come back, the first thing we need to do as a board is just have a discussion around the ARPA funding and the process by which we want to go about allocating those funds. And then after we kind of discuss that as a board, we can get into other related COVID items. But let's start first with our public speakers, and let's hear from those, and then we will come back and discuss.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. I'll note for the record that we received 4 e-comments on this item. We have 9 requests to speak on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 10, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. As a reminder for the callers, if you do not wish to speak on this item, please hang up and call back when the board begins discussion of the next item. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you will have 1 minute to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I would remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. I'd like to introduce our new Chief Deputy Clerk of the Board, Ann Moore, who will be assisting us with the callers today. So take it away, Ann.
Our first caller is 9364. 9364, press *6 to unmute. 9364. Press star 6 to unmute. If we don't hear from you, we'll come back. Our next caller is 6362. If you'd like to speak on this item, please press star 6 to unmute. Six. Do
you want to do it on this? It's not.
I need
We're going to go ahead and mute that caller. We'll come back to that caller.
Our next caller is 5033. 5033, please press star 6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Gretchen Gohl, and I'm with Reopen San Diego, and I would like to know why the recently updated public health order dated April 7th says we are still under a stay-at-home order when Dr. Wooten just said in her presentation that it was lifted in January. You cannot legally ask us to stay in our homes for over 1 year. It is an abuse of power. It is false imprisonment. Our county's health facilities, including hospitals, are not overwhelmed. The state of emergency should have ended many months ago, last year. You currently have no real data to support continuing it indefinitely, as you are attempting to do. Please end the stay-at-home order. Additionally, I would like to know why libraries are still closed for browsing, computer services, and educational programs, and why indoor recreation centers are also still closed. These are essential. We can dine indoors in restaurants without masks, so why can't we browse indoors for books? Indoor club sports like gymnastics and volleyball have been in operation since last June, with masks being optional, and there have been no COVID cases in these facilities. So why
Thank you.
And adults organize sports?
Our next caller is 6362. 6362, we're calling again. If you'd like to speak, please press star 6 to unmute. Oh, 6362. We'll come back to you again. Our next caller is 9884. 9884. Please press star 6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Alex Pellegrino. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Alex Pellegrino. I have been a real estate investor, property manager, and developer in the city of San Diego for over 20 years. I'm here to address the issue of evictions, eviction moratorium, and our need to follow the policy of Sacramento. The problem with following the policy of Sacramento is it doesn't correlate with what is actually happening in the city of San Diego. There was a lot of statistics about COVID that was mentioned recently. The most important that was negated was the fact that there's only 1,580 active cases of COVID in a city of, or a county of 3.3 million people. That means that that your odds of encountering somebody with COVID is 1 in 2,100. We've also done a great job in producing vaccine and distributing the vaccine to our elderly. I think it would say that 84% of the population of our elderly has had the vaccine.
Thank you, sir.
If you guys...
Our next item, we're going to recall 9884. 9884. Speaker 9884 does not... Oh.
I am here. Can you hear me?
I apologize. I think that's the last of our callers for this item.
And before we do that, let's try again, 9364. 9364. And then we'll try one more time for 7633. 7633, please press star 6 to unmute your line. And Chair Fletcher, seeing no movement on those lines, that appears to conclude public comment on this item.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. So let's start just as a board. Let's just spend a moment talking about the ARPA funds and what we want to do. So we had kind of a couple piecemeal board letters to do ARPA funds, a little bit here, a little bit there. And then at our last board meeting, we came in and we adopted a framework, the framework that was put up on the board. And we said, these are the framework by which we want to spend the ARPA funds. That was based on some community input. And then we asked each board office said, if you have suggestions on the specifics within that framework, please work with the CAO and the staff. They would develop specific allocation programs for each bucket in that framework, bring that back to our board once we have federal guidance, and then we could make adjustments and vote on it in open session. But we started with the piecemeal and then we moved to the framework and we kind of asked all the offices work with the CAO, try to get in, and then we'll come back and vote and we can make adjustments. And now today and tomorrow, we have 5 additional piecemeal board letters that are divvying up little portions of this. And we can go either way, but if as a board, we want to spend the ARPA funding in piecemeal board letters, I've got probably a dozen I want to docket. My guess is Supervisor Vargas has some she wants to docket. And so if we want to take that approach, then we probably at our next board meeting should say, everyone docket what you want to do. And then we can hear the 30 to 40 board letters and try to sort out of those 30 to 40 different proposals with 30 to 40 different dollar amounts, how we make that all fit into what we want to do. I think that is potentially going to be very challenging and difficult to execute on and very frustrating. My suggestion would be that we not do the 5 board letters that are piecemealing the approach. Instead, if we have a suggestion for ARPA funds, that we work with the CAO and we try and get that in what she brings back. And then some of these items we could refer to budget. And then if they get funded in ARPA, then you don't need to fund them out of the budget. But if we're gonna, or if we wanna take up these items today and tomorrow and pass them, we just have to be prepared that at our next board meeting, we will probably have 30 different items, all also around ARPA funding. And we're gonna have to do some pretty significant deconflicting of how that fits into the framework that we adopted. And so I think as a board, our best path forward, but it's up for discussion, would be these 5 items we either withdraw and work with the CAO to get it included in the framework that she brings back, and then we can change it, or you can propose changes when that framework comes back, or we remove any reference to ARPA from these board letters and simply refer them to budget. And then by the time we get to budget, we can assess if we still need to do them or not do them. But we just got to decide on a path of a board in terms of a process for how we want to allocate ARPA funds. And so maybe we can just have a discussion on that, see if we can come to some type of consensus. And then after we do that, then we can get back to any discussion on the COVID items. So let's start with the ARPA funding. I'll start with Vice Chair Vargas, just kind of thoughts on best process moving forward for how we can most efficiently allocate the ARPA funds.
Thank you for that, Chair Fletcher. I actually was taken a little bit aback when I saw these requests, because I felt like I had failed my district for not turning in requests for the ARPA funding because I was following the guidance that we put together last time around to really follow a framework that allowed us to really look at things from a bigger picture and to be able to support those funding initiatives. And so I actually am interested in ensuring that we follow that process so that we are able to make sure that together we decide where those funds need to go instead of piecemealing, because I do think that we might still get additional dollars. And so as we're looking at it, we're able to really prioritize the needs of our communities and we can do it together. And I think it has a greater impact versus doing it in pieces. And so I would support that. And I don't know if you need a motion for that, or do we wait until after so that we can have further discussion or
yeah, let's have discussion and then we'll see if we need to incorporate that into a recommendation. Let me go to Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had questions and comments on the other things. I wasn't.
If we can come back, Supervisor Desmond, if it's okay, maybe we talk about the ARPA funds and then we'll come back and tackle all the COVID related issues if that's okay with you.
Well, I do have a comment on this real quick, but then so I guess with all due respect to our chair, the events industry ARPA funds kind of led this off at the last meeting. So
I
proposed to leave.
I think Supervisor Jesmo, what led it off was the initial board letter. The first one was allocating additional small business grant funding. And so we did that one, and then we did a second one, and then we did a third one. And then it was kind of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't piecemeal it. So we put together the framework. So we had 3 piecemeal board letters that were all done before we got to the framework. And so we could do it either way. I mean, it does not particularly matter to me. It's just figuring out what's going to be most efficient for how we get it done.
Okay, well, I guess would you be, if you want the 5 pulled, one of the items we're agreeing to today, which is also ARPA dollars, which to me is also a piecemeal effort, is with the events industry permit fees.
I'd be fine to remove that, but if we, just so we're clear, on February 9th, we did ARPA funding $30 million for small business grants. And then on April 6th, we did ARPA funding $50 million for small business grants. On that same board meeting, we did $1.7 million for events fees. So we basically piecemealed $81.7 million before we did the framework, and then we did the framework. Now, doesn't particularly matter to me. I'm happy to try to see if I can get the events industry fee waiver included in the framework amount of what we set aside for small business funds. So I'm happy to strike that amount from there and work with staff to see if I can get it included in the small business stimulus program. But there again, were 3 different actions kind of piecemealing this, brought forward by different folks, 3 different folks before we got to the framework. So I'm happy to strike the events fee from this, and that doesn't cause me any concern at all if that makes it easier.
I'm okay leaving it in. It's just, to me, that was kind of the one that tipped for us to take the same path. Just a comment. So at this point on that. So, and I'm fine with it. I voted for it. I'm happy with it the way it is. But to me, that's the one to kind of open the door.
Yeah, it was 2 months after the first one opening the door. But your point's fair, and I don't, disagree. That was why at the last board meeting we tried to move to the framework kind of concept. But I'm happy. So, Supervisor, are you open to the ones you have docketed for tomorrow, working with staff to try and include those in what gets brought back, and not having individual board letters brought forward on those?
I guess I'd like to hear from the rest of my colleagues before I make that decision.
Fair enough. Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Sorry, the light just went off, the automatic movement light in my office. You gotta move around, keep this light on. So a couple things. First of all, I appreciate Chair Fletcher, your point, right? That we want to do big things with this money that are really transformative for our community. And in order to do that, we need to be thoughtful and strategic and not piecemeal. So I very much appreciate that point. And with that in mind, the item I brought forward today, I would be comfortable amending it to refer to budget and work with staff to see if that can be included in the ARPA framework, as per your suggestion. The only piece that I think is sort of in a different bucket is the broadband item, which is basically an urgent item. We would need to adopt something today in order to move that forward. So I think what I don't want to do is signal to staff that this is separate from the ARPA broadband money. So I think what it would really come down to is a bit of I think we would need to have a lot of clarity that if we're going to do what you suggest, which is refer to budget, that we are not telling staff that these items should not come from ARPA. We're saying that it could come from either source. It could come from ARPA, it could come from budget, and we'll work with staff to see if it makes sense to take it out of the ARPA framework. What I don't want to do is end up with a bunch of refer to budget items that could and should be funded by the ARPA money. And that would be my big concern. So just to be very clear, like the broadband piece and the small rental assistance, I think those should both come out of ARPA, that they fit within the ARPA framework. I would be happy to work with staff to find the space for the ARPA framework to pay for them. But I don't want to suggest to staff that these have to come out of the general fund and the general budget.
Yeah, I think so. One thing, Supervisor, on the fiber optics one, the digital divide one, we don't know what the federal guidelines are. We don't know when we're going to get them. We don't know when we'll actually get the money. And so if that's an urgent need that needs to be met immediately, that would actually be more appropriate to consider under a 4-vote item and just make the direct allocation now, as opposed to waiting for potential federal rules and waiting for potential federal dollars to actually arrive. And so that's one thing. The second thing is, and then again, we can go either way, but if we basically pass something that says we'll try to do it out of ARPA, but if not, refer to budget, then again, that's totally fine, but you're going to get a flood of very similar things that are making clear kind of what people want in the ARPA funds. And so that's where I think, you know, we just have to kind of sort out a way for which way we want to go. I mean, we can pass something, not reference ARPA funds, say refer to budget, and then we can consider it at the budget unless it gets funded in ARPA. And then if it does, we don't have to consider it when it gets funded. But again, if
that's what I would support that. I think I support that approach. What I don't want to do is signal to staff that this conversation means that we are deciding that we don't want these things in ARPA, right? You know, and I think that's my concern here is that my view is that these should be in the ARPA framework and this should be funded in ARPA. I'm comfortable, you know, moving forward with an item that says refer to budget and then seeing if it makes sense for it to come out of ARPA. But I just wanted to make it very clear.
But you're not sending a signal to say, don't consider it in ARPA.
Correct. Because in fact, I do think that these things should come out of ARPA and I want to make that very clear, but I completely hear your point, right? Like I also have a bunch of other stuff that I didn't bring. And that I am working directly with staff on, and this meeting's already going to go for 48 hours. The next one will go for
days,
entire week.
Days.
Yes.
Yeah. So consistent with that, I mean, these 5 items, folks could either withdraw them if they wanted to withdraw them and try and get them in ARPA funds, or we could take them up, but with the understanding that the only fiscal language in this would be a referral to budget, with the understanding that if it gets worked into ARPA funding, then we don't have to consider it in the budget. And there's nothing that connotates these things should not be considered for ARPA. But what we're avoiding is a flood of board letters next meeting that are intended to try and influence ARPA funding. Instead, we'll each work with the CAO, work in our priorities. And then what comes back from the CAO, she's not going to be able to balance out everyone's priorities. We're still going to have to make some hard decisions. But when the CAO brings it back, we would go bucket by bucket by bucket through the framework, make our decisions on that bucket, move to the next one, make our decisions. And then whatever folks can't get in ARPA, then folks can come back and fight for in the budget.
So just let me, just to kind of continue to deepen on this. I think the one piece that I want to make sure that we're kind of thinking ahead on is that I'm definitely planning to bring an item that's a pretty robust description on robustly spelled out policy framework that staff is already working on it within ARPA. So it's already in the ARPA framework. We know it's in the ARPA framework. So it's not a concern. It's more getting all on the same page as to what sort of the details are of what we're looking at. And so I think that it's important to have public space for public participation and public feedback on some of these sort of like complex issues, and particularly, on things that are, new or novel. And I definitely want to make sure we're not just sort of having conversations that cut out that opportunity for public participation.
What I would suggest then is we convene a special meeting with the Board of Supervisors and everyone docket their specific policy ideas for ARPA funds. And we just spend a couple days working through all those board letters. We can have a little matrix of what's passed and how much is in each one, and we can divvy up the $653 million that way, because we just got to pick one way or the other. Either we're going to work with staff to have them bring back a proposal, and then we're going to tweak that, or we're going to docket very specific prescriptive things, and then we're going to consider those and work through those. But we can't have half of us operating under one assumption and the other half under a different assumption. So we either got to pick. We could convene a special board meeting for a few days, and we could literally dock it away and have robust discussion on each bucket and each program, and sort that through and try to. I mean, ultimately we can come to a consensus because we just have a vote and we know how much ARPA funds are there. So we either have to do that, we got to
I think what Nathan, I'm suggesting a third approach, right? Which is to go mostly along the lines of what you've outlined, which is that we're working with staff to develop the details in the ARPA framework. But that once something is in the ARPA framework, once it's already there and staff has already put together a proposal around it, that then there's a value to having a discussion around the details of what staff has put out. And that's what I'm talking about, right? Is, so for example, if, I'll talk about the thing that's clearly on my mind. I don't need to speak in code. We talked at the last meeting about the 15 million for protection for eviction, right? So for tenants who are facing eviction. And so that's really what I'm talking about, that, we have 15 million. We all know it's for tenants facing eviction. We're working with staff on that, but I want to make sure that we have opportunity for public feedback on sort of the details of what that program looks like. So I think that's actually the only one that I'm talking about specifically, which is the eviction protection legal assistance that, is already carved out. But I just want to make sure that we're not cutting off the ability of folks to comment. So maybe the appropriate way to do it would be to have that comment when the ARPA framework comes back, and I'm open to that as well. So that I just want to be clear that I'm talking about, this, like, some, narrow programs that we already know are going to happen, but I want to make sure that there's space for public comment on sort of the nuances of that.
And I think the space for comment on how we do that is really good. I think the question is, are we going to allow staff to bring a proposal and then we can propose changes to that? Or are we all going to docket our own individual board letters for how those funding should be allocated? Because you may have in your mind how that 15 million would be spent. Supervisor Vargas may have in her mind Supervisor Anderson. And so we could docket 5 different board letters for how that 15 million would be spent and sorted out. Or we can let staff bring back one proposal. We can discuss that. We can debate that. We can change that and give guidance on how we want to do it. So the question is, how are we going to make that policy? Is the foundational part of that going to be what the CAO brings back and then we provide input and change to that? Or are we all going to individually docket our own policies? And that's the issue that we have to resolve.
Can I ask the CEO? Could I ask the CEO? Could I ask Helen? Just for your view on a process that, what kind of process here seems to be most efficient from your point of view? Because I think Supervisor Fletcher is making a very good point around efficiency and sort of not ending up with a million different board items. But I also, I'm cognizant the CAO needs some kind of vehicle to get clarity on what she's trying to put together. So, yeah.
Thanks, Supervisor. The preferable way for us would be for us to come back with everybody's, what you've told us privately, and put it into some sort of recommendation, knowing we won't be able to do everything that each board office wants. But we would make our best efforts to meet the framework as you all approved last week and come out with what we think are the best recommendations. We would bring that forward, and then you all could decide what changes you wanted to make, just like the way you did with the framework last week. That is clearly the most efficient way, and I think it's the fairest way, and I think it does give the public a chance to comment on those items. But I would need to know ahead of time what each office wants so that we can do our best to put those recommendations in. And I just, once again, want to close by reiterating, we will not have enough to do all of the things that you all would like to do in the ARPA, just the way we do not have enough to do all the things you would like to do in the budget or in the change letter. So there are going to have to be some very tough decisions that are going to be made, but better that we have a recommendation to work from, I think, than just countless board letters that become very confusing.
So can I ask, this seems to maybe be a path forward that I would certainly be comfortable with. If we have board letters that we are thinking about and instead of just working with staff sort of verbally, which is fine as well, but Helen, we could turn those board letters into sort of private memos for you. So you have the same kind of guidance that we would have been looking to do in a board letter, but that way we're moving it forward in a more efficient process, and that way there's an opportunity for public to have comment when the whole framework comes back, as opposed to in a piecemeal way.
That would be fine. I just don't want you all to have to do a ton of work if it's not going to be in our recommendation. But clearly, if that's the way you would like to do it, that would be absolutely fine. But just giving me a list is also fine too, whatever works best for each of the different board offices.
Okay.
Good.
Great.
Supervisor Anderson.
Boy, my comments, my list of comments has gotten bigger and bigger as we've spoken. Didn't staff go out with a poll in every one of our districts to talk about how the money was supposed to be? So I would think that that would be part of the framework, that poll, otherwise it seemed kind of useless. The other, so I'm more than happy to pull my item 25. There were 3 elements to item 25. One was ARPA. One was a request that we reach out to the state to ask for more flexibility with the money. I don't think that's a big whoop-de-doo. I think that we can get there. The presentation that we just witnessed took care of. My last item was the expanded outreach. Although when we get to item 10, I do have some questions I want to follow up with. On the, just for clarity, the $40 million in county employee COVID bonuses, that's coming from ARPA too, though, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we did do some things with it before. And then when we get to this crossroads, if it's possible, I wouldn't mind sitting through a workshop and working as a team going through it. You know, I love all your ideas. Today on the board packet, Supervisor Lawson-Remer had an item that I absolutely wanted to support, and I thought she had great ideas on it. And with the Brown Act, if we're not noticed, we can't really talk about these things. So I'm wondering when staff has it come back, maybe we could just have one single workshop meeting that we notice, that we all can exchange ideas to make sure that our districts are well represented. So with that, I'll wait until we get back to item 10, but I'm happy to pull my item 25 and be a team player.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you. And Supervisor Anderson, I think you're spot on. I mean, essentially what we do, I mean, it is kind of, when we come back, right, when staff brings back, so what we did is we allocated funds in buckets, right? That was the framework, right? We had 40 million for essential workers. We had money for homelessness, direct stimulus payments, right? And so we have the whole list of kind of those buckets. And then staff was going to develop the specific programs and dollar amounts that would go with those programs consistent with those overarching buckets. And then when they bring those back, we will have a pretty lengthy meeting where we will go through each of those kind of buckets of the framework. Staff will say, here's our recommendation on programs and dollars, and then we will discuss and debate each of those items, pass it, move on to the next, pass it, move on to the next until we work through the totality of it. And we have it within our power as a board to move money between buckets. I mean, we can do a lot of that. And so that is essentially a public workshop via a board meeting. And so I think that's when, you know, it'll take us a little bit to work through it. I think the question is, instead of all the kind of individual letters, we work with staff, and then when that presentation comes back, then we can make adjustments in a very transparent way. So we give our ideas to the CAO, let her consider those, and then bring it forward, and then we can make adjustments on the dais when we get there. And so if seems like we're generally comfortable with that, then essentially these 5 items that are on today and tomorrow's agenda, we would either withdraw or if we want, then pass and refer them to budget, and then we can consider them when we get to budget. But we're just not opening the floodgate. Instead of every idea being docketed, every idea gets into the CAO, and then that comes back in one batch. If that works for everyone, I think it'll be a little bit more efficient way to get to the same outcome, with everyone still having a chance to make the case for what everyone thinks is important. So let me go back to Supervisor Desmond. I see you put your hand back up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. I'm okay with pulling and being part of the 5 if all 5 of the items are going to be pulled. I'm okay with that. Okay. And then I don't know, whenever you're ready for questions.
Okay. Or real quick. So I think the ones tomorrow. Let me just ask. I believe Supervisor Desmond, you and Supervisor Lawson-Remer have item 18 tomorrow on the digital divide. That one I believe is time sensitive. So maybe we would leave that one and refer to budget. And then if we would agree to we would all pull the other 4 and provide that input to staff for consideration when they bring back their thing. Does that work for everyone?
I don't want to pull the rental assistance to support tenants, but I would change it. I would amend it so it's a refer to budget item instead of an ARPA item.
Okay. Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Item. Yeah. We were talking about item 18. That's Supervisor Anderson, I think.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
it's Supervisor Anderson. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So maybe that one, if we keep, we would refer to budget. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I
yes.
make one suggestion, and that is that we come back on June the 8th with this, because that would allow you all sufficient time that anything that did not get approved in the ARPA allocations, then you could put into your own change letters at the end of the budget, at the time of budget hearings.
So to do the ARPA framework on June 8th?
That's correct, assuming we have the guidelines, which we anticipate getting before the 10th or 11th of May. So we would have a couple weeks to work with each office on what you would like to see as the sub-elements of the framework. We could bring that forward on the 8th. You all could make your decisions, do the appropriation potentially then on the 8th. Anything that was not appropriated, then you all would still be free to consider that in your own change letters at the end of the month, end of June, during the budget process.
I think that works for me. Does that work for, just touch base real quick. Supervisor Desmond, that approach work for you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Austin Reamer?
Yep.
Supervisor Vargas?
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson?
Yes.
All right, we got a plan. Now, ARPA fund framework, we're good. We know what we're doing there. Now, why don't we just go back to comments unrelated to ARPA funding on the general.
Sorry, Chair Fletcher, can I just summarize just to make sure that was a lot of moving parts. I just want to make sure I completely got it.
Yeah.
So what I got down is I'm going to change our item 12 to refer to budget. So it's not an ARPA item. We're withdrawing the other 3 items except the urgency item of item 18, which is for tomorrow, which is for me and Anderson. And we're hoping that, we'll be able to get 4 votes and do for a budget item and an immediate appropriation instead of ARPA. So that's also won't be an ARPA item. We will come back on June 8th for a robust discussion about the ARPA framework as proposed by staff. We will each work with staff within the framework to talk about program design and program details within the framework we've already talked about. And then we'll sort of hash it out with public comment and a lot of opportunity for public testimony and public input on the 8th.
That is correct.
Great. I am big supporter. Good work.
All right. Good job. Okay, now, if no more comments on ARPA, let's just return to the COVID-specific items. I want to start with Supervisor Desmond. I know he had a COVID-related comment or questions for staff for normal process.
Well, thank you very much. I have a question and a comment on this one. First of all, Gary Johnson, I see your face, your beautiful face here on the in the Zoom. My office, we've received a lot of comments and questions about the 4th of July. I know it's after June 15th when everything's supposed to be opened up, but we're getting a lot of comments about parades, fireworks, celebrations on the 4th of July. Can you give us an explanation on those events, if they can take place, and if so, how? And then after his answer, I got a comment for the item as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly can, Supervisor, and thank you for that, for the opportunity. And good afternoon, everybody, or good morning still, I guess. The question's perfect timing because actually we've been leaning into this quite significantly here with the reopening team in the state. Matter of fact, Supervisor, this morning I did get a response from CDPH, upper echelon leadership that works a lot of the guidance documents. The CDPH, the California Department of Public Health, is in the process of drafting beyond the blueprint guidelines specific to events like parades and other similar type gatherings. And with the plan to review that those draft guidelines this week with the counties, in particular our public health officers. And the other thing that I would just direct folks to also is that yesterday, the Department of Public Health also updated and released their face covering guidance. And that guidance actually does expand to the point where it very, very closely now aligns itself with national and state level fully vaccinated guidance. And in that guidance, it talks about the fact that wearing face coverings in crowded outdoor events such as parades, festivals, live performance, and other similar settings. So that language is actually in the updated face covering guidance, and we expect that guidance is actually going to bridge, beyond the 15th of June. So the bottom line, sir, to your question, the expectation is that such 4th of July activities like parades will be permissible, but we also believe there'll be some limited public health restraints, maybe such as some masking, and that guidance hopefully will be out very, very soon because we do appreciate the urgency. People have to advance plan, permit, they've got a contract, and they got to inform the public. So I'm with you, sir, and we're on it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yeah, I appreciate it, and because we're getting lots of calls for that particular holiday, for sure. So I just wanted to say, overall, though, I appreciate the update today this morning. There's a lot of information given out. Thanks. I really appreciate staff's effort with the great to hear about the vaccinations and everything else that's happening. But I have a concern, and it's about our border and COVID-19. I received updates from county staff about those crossing our border, not through the established processes or border crossings, but the people known as entry without inspection. So in some cases, the crossings happen in this region, and also the federal government is transporting migrants into San Diego County from Arizona and Texas. And my concern is that the feds are not COVID testing the migrants that cross without inspection. And in many cases, they're being released in San Diego County without having any inspections. Now, I realize some of them go through Jewish Family Services and other entities, but if they can't take them, then these migrants are let go in San Diego County at transit stations and things like that without being tested. So San Diegans, we've worked very hard to get into the orange tier. We put businesses and livelihoods on hold for this pandemic, also schools on hold. And in order for us to even get into the next yellow tier, we need less than 2 people per 100,000 testing positive. And with the federal government releasing migrants into the region that have not been tested, really kind of hampers our efforts. And I realize those people, even if they test positive, are not counted against us. But if they're in our communities or in our region, they're being let go without testing. That really puts our population at risk. And I know the county staff has been working aggressively advocating for COVID testing of the asylum seekers in federal custody. But I'm more concerned about those that crossed without inspection, that didn't go through the asylum process, that are being released in San Diego County. So I'd like to support staff efforts. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve the staff recommendations, 1 through, I guess, 10, but I maybe make this item 10, is to support the staff efforts. I'd like us, the board, to send a letter. So I have a motion that I'd like to include in the amendments, I guess this would be item 10, to include a letter from the chair on behalf of the board that goes to our federal delegation and to the White House, stating that before any migrants are released into San Diego County, they need to be COVID tested and COVID treated or quarantined as necessary. So that would be my motion to send that letter requesting that anyone released in San Diego County is COVID tested and then treated as necessary, along with the other items in item 10.
I would be happy to second that motion. I support Supervisor Desmond's approach here. Obviously we want the federal government to do their job, which is the testing and treatment. And so I think encouraging them to do that, I think, is an appropriate thing for us to do as a board. Recognizing if there's gaps and they're not, we're going to have to try to step in and help where we can with testing and whatnot. But I think providing that clear direction as a board, we're requesting them to do that, is something I fully support. So happy to second the motion. So it would be the adoption of the recommendations with the additional direction to draft a letter from me as chair on behalf of the board to our federal partners. Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Let's go to Supervisor Vargas.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you and update for the presentation. And, we keep making a lot of progress as a county. And I just want to say that I'm really grateful to all county staff. I think what's really important, and one of the learned opportunities from this process, is that one size doesn't fit all. Fit all approach does not work for everyone. And we've done a lot of different pilot programs in the South Bay that I think have really, I think, will resonate across the county. I did want to highlight that one of the results was in the 92173 zip code, which represents San Isidro. And I just want to highlight this because this is one of the hardest hit communities, and yet with one of the healthy equity zip codes. And it really demonstrates how interventions and the flexibility and the nimbleness of our organizations and partners to really work together with us to do things a little bit different made a difference. And so have now received at least one dose. And so I appreciate that we are actually, as a county, we have desegregated the data, and we are now ensuring that we're able to keep, Hispanic and Asian community and Native American community are doing well, right? There's still a lot of work to be done, but I do think that in the American community, and I know that we're doing a lot with the Black nurses and some other folks, but I think it's important to note that only 2.7% of the African American population has been vaccinated in the county. And so as we're looking at these 39 health equity, zip codes, there's 26.7% of the population that is actually that we have. Let's emphasize and let's pivot to ensure that the communities where there's still the greatest need is where we're really allocating some of the resources. It's, we can do that, and we can do that working with trusted community partnerships as well, and meeting our communities that are still, staying behind. So I do want to support the efforts to ensure community partners are, continuing to do this work. But I want us to, as like the county staff did before, to continue. I want to say thank you again. I'm happy to support, the rest, with the goal that we continue to be nimble when it comes to making.
Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. Supervisor Anderson.
I have a bunch of reports, like so many of the folks that rent. They rent this property, they're not going to be. The deferral really needs to include not just a set deadline, but a deadline that allows them to be productive again. So if I can't sell my products, while this is very helpful, it's not conclusive enough. Mr. Chair, would it be better for the process for me to make an amendment, or would it be better to come back as an additional line item amending this? Because what is that? It gets deferred to the time in which they can open, as opposed to a hard set time. If they can open sooner, it wouldn't have to be that long. If they can't open by that date, we're going to have to extend it anyway. So tying it to an arbitrary date that is tied to the opening, if you have a flight school and nobody can go to your flight school, well, you have no cash flow. So how would you like to handle?
So what you're, just so I'm clear, Supervisor, you're asking for the rules around the rental assistance to be modified to allow for deferral of receiving the rental?
Well, until they open, it doesn't make sense that we're going to defer them to a set date, and that's good and it's helpful. But if they can't open up, it's not as helpful as if we just go ahead and tie it for them to a specific, to the date when they can open and start renting or using their property. Right now that they have no ability to pay anything, and the whole idea of deferring is to help them through these hard times. Well, the hard times won't finish until they can actually open their business.
Got it. So you want to do an extension of the rent deferral until
they're able to open for business.
Got it. Let me ask staff, is that something that we can do?
Through the chair, this is Cam Humphreys. I think that certainly we have been up to this point been providing the rent deferrals to those who have opted in based on direction from the board, and I think we could certainly can continue to do so.
Okay. So we could accommodate Supervisor Anderson's request with those airport folks by just understanding that the extension of the rent deferral period for renters for airports would be continued until such time as they can resume normal operations.
Correct. That would be awesome. There's one other aspect for these properties, for them to go out and get financing to start up, they need to have a 5-year window to pay back. So if it's possible, we could also include allowing them 5 years to pay back the money. They want to pay 100% of the money. They're not looking for any discount. They're going to get a deferral, but they want to pay it all back. But they need 5 years in order to go to the bank because they have to show something to the bank. If we could also include that, I would be delighted.
Let me ask staff, do we need to amend the motion to make that clear, or is that doable in the existing authorization you have?
We would need to amend the motion. It currently requests a payback within 4 months.
Okay. All right. So Supervisor Anderson, you would be making a friendly amendment to Supervisor Desmond's motion and my second, that on the extension of the rent deferral period, it could be extended for up to a 5-year period. I would be happy to accept that. Let me ask Supervisor Desmond.
The payback period.
The payback period, understood.
Yes. Okay.
Let me ask Supervisor Desmond if he is okay accepting that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. There you go, Supervisor Anderson.
Well, I can't wait to vote for this. This is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. So we have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by myself, to approve the COVID-19 recommendations in agenda item 10 with the following two additions: that it, on recommendation 9, authorize an extension of the rent deferral period for renters of County of San Diego owned commercial or residential properties with up to, if needed, a 5-year payback period. And then adding a recommendation to have the County of San Diego send a letter to our federal partners requesting that any individuals released from immigration custody be COVID tested and COVID treated prior to their release. I see Supervisor Vargas here. Let me go back to Supervisor Vargas.
I just need a clarification. So we're going to, for people who are commercial renters, we're giving them up to 5 years to pay back if they're not able to pay back their rent right now?
This is just on county-owned commercial or residential properties. That's right.
Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind for future items.
All right.
One other item, if I may bring it up. In my item 25, there are 3 aspects. We've addressed 2 of them, but the third one is asking staff to perhaps I don't know the best way of doing this, whether it's a letter from you, Mr. Chair, representing the board, but asking for the state for more flexibility in moving forward with the ERAF money. Because I think that the difficulties on this is, you know, if they were more aligned with federal policy, I think we'd all be in a better position.
I support that action you brought forward, and if you're going to withdraw that item, then I think we can add it in here. I think it's appropriate given the recommendations here include a lot of substantive efforts around rental assistance. And so what we could do is make an additional friendly amendment to also direct a letter be drafted and sent from the chair on behalf of the board to the state requesting greater flexibility in the use of the state rental assistance funds. And I would be happy to accept that as a friendly amendment. Let me ask Supervisor Desmond if he is okay with that.
Absolutely.
All right. So we have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by myself, adopt the recommendations with the letter to the federal government around COVID testing, a letter to the state government around flexibility on rental assistance, and the clarification that there can be up to a 5-year payback period if necessary on deferral of rents on county-owned commercial or residential properties. Any other questions or comments on this item?
I just hope this.
Oh, you can't add any more. You're full. You're full. You're done. No more friendly.
This item never ends. It's been so good to me. Thank you.
I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay, thank you. I was just kidding. You could add more. All right. So, and I just want to take a moment and thank our board members for the flexibility on the ARPA funding. I know there's a lot of priorities and a lot of desire, and I think that what we're doing is designed to provide us the most efficient way while ensuring every board member can push every item that you think ought to be included in there, and we have a mechanism to do that. And so I greatly appreciate our board's patience as we worked through a good process moving forward on that. With that, let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Thank you. We are now at 12:20. We're going to go ahead and break for lunch. We want to give our staff a chance to break. We will reconvene at 1 p.m. We will start with agenda item 1, and we will work through the remaining 16 or 18 items that are on our agenda today. So we will break and we will reconvene at 1 p.m. Thank you all.